The sound of Sean Cavalier cocking his gun and pointing it at Jake's head felt like a jolt in his mind, causing him to flinch. He blinked and tried to steady his breathing, trying to control his emotions, reminding himself where he was and that he wasn't really in danger from the fucker. But then Sean yelled accusations, still with the gun pointed at him, and Jake's heart picked up speed. "I'm going to ask you again, do you intend to pull the trigger?" he muttered to himself, trying to fight the abyss that was clawing its way all over him, sinking its talons into his shoulders, getting ready to pull him down, deeper into the darkness, threatening to consume him. Sean yelled something again, but Jake couldn't hear him anymore. The sound and Sean's actions triggered a flood of memories he'd fought to bury long ago. He took quick, shallow breaths, and in an instant, he was no longer in the apartment. The walls seemed to close in, transforming into the cold, dark confines of a childhood bedroom, where he cowered from the shouts and blows of his father. His pulse quickened further, and a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. He shook his head sharply, trying to clear the images, but now he was back in the dusty, chaotic streets of a war-torn city. He could smell the gunpowder and hear the deafening roar of gunfire. His vision blurred, blending reality with the past. Jake's hands trembled violently. He could feel the cold steel of a gun barrel pressed against his temple, just like that day in the camp when they had been ambushed by an opposition army. His body reacted as if it were happening all over again. His breathing became shallow and his vision tunneled, narrowing until all he could see was that dreadful scene. "It's just in my head," he muttered to himself. Then he found himself in dense vegetation, the trees around him seeming to pulse, and he heard voices. Harsh, accusing voices from his past. They mingled with the imagined shouts of his fellow Marines. Orders barked in urgency and fear. "Get a grip, Jake," he whispered to himself. But the words felt hollow, lost in the cacophony of his mind. The living room, once a safe haven, had become a battlefield. He blinked, tightening his fists, trying to silence the chaos echoing through his fractured psyche. "Unless you want to shoot me, get that damn gun off my head, or you will be on the floor eating your own fucking gut in a minute," Jake growled, a raw primal sound of a man at the edge. He could barely differentiate between past and present. The lines were blurred by his trauma. Every noise, every movement, a threat. Andrew, who had earlier gotten the intel from Anton and Greg that Sean Cavalier was on Madison Avenue, returned to the apartment and happened upon the scene. Retrieving his gun, he pointed it at Sean Cavalier's head and whispered, "You fool," pointing a gun at Jake Darfield's head. "You must have a death wish. Back away slowly or he will kill you like one would an animal." Sean Cavalier stiffened and slowly lowered his gun from Jake's head. Charles stood a few inches away from the doorway where Jake stood, staring blankly into space with fists clenched and chest heaving like someone in a trance fighting an inner battle. His breathing labored and audible. "Jake, can you hear me? It's Charles. Andrew and I are here with you. Remember us? We've been like brothers for years, always looking out for each other. We've got your back, man. And there's nothing to worry about here. Trust us. You're safe. We're right here with you. Stay with us, brother." Charles spoke softly, his voice calm and reassuring, trying to reach Jake and bring him back to the present. "You bunch of freaks," Sean Cavalier retorted. "Ah, but you know what they say, only a freak knows who is one," Andrew replied in jest, making Sean glower at him. The threatening sounds in Jake's head gradually faded, the images receded, and he was left trembling on his feet, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. "Hey, welcome back, buddy," Charles quipped. Jake blinked, his eyes darting in their sockets until they fell on Sean Cavalier, who was on the other side of the hallway, trapped there by Andrew. "You are an idiot," Jake growled as he stormed out, closing the door behind him to stand a few feet away from Sean. "Next time you pull a gun on me, you'd better shoot, do you fucking hear me?" he retorted. "You won't dare touch me. Hawthorne will gun you down like a freaking dog," Sean Cavalier growled in response. Andrew laughed, a hollow kind. "You are indeed an idiot," Charles interjected. "He won't even know what he's doing until you're dead, moron," Andrew retorted through gritted teeth. "Now how about you tell me what the hell you were doing in my girlfriend's apartment?" Andrew asked, pressing a gun to Sean's head. "You're not going to shoot me, so you might as well lower the fucking gun," Sean retorted. "True," Andrew replied, tucking his gun away. I don't need it to beat your ass anyway, he added. Sean scoffed. I need answers, Kimura. What the fuck do you want? Andrew inquired, his voice cold and devoid of any mirth now. Give me back my wife. You guys have no idea what you are playing with, Sean retorted. Give you back your wife? Charles echoed with a puzzled laugh. Wait, you've lost me. Didn't your people already take her? You know. He mimed a slashing motion across his neck. Or do you think we don't know they took her? Charles went on. Her trail ended in Mexico, and then it was like she vanished into thin air. But witnesses reported hearing an aircraft come for her. Ricky says he doesn't have her, Nathaniel denies having her, and then my father discovered that Jake had a history with her. It made perfect sense that he could have gone after her. He's got the experience. Don't think we don't have files on you guys. We know your background and what you're trained for, so tell Jake to give me my damn wife. Sean demanded. Jake tried not to show the dread swelling in the pit of his stomach. Henri Cavalier knew about him and Julia. Fuck. He cursed mentally. Well, you've forgotten something, Andrew replied, pausing for effect. What is that? Sean growled. Jake is an employee of the Hawthornes. I am the head of security, also an employee of the Hawthornes. Jake can't just up and go to Mexico without my permission or knowledge, because that would mean using Hawthorne property, which would be grounds for dismissal. That would be going against our boss's orders to forget Mrs. Cavalier once you all took her. And I'm certain Jake loves his job, Andrew explained. Turning to Jake, he asked, How much do you make in a year, Jake? Jake smirked. Way more than I earned working for the government who fucked me over mentally. Yes, I do love my job. Very much, Jake quipped. We have enough money to move anywhere in the world, but we chose to stay. We don't go in with guns blazing, Sean. This isn't a mafia family. We protect our boss's interests. We don't disobey him or bite the hand that feeds us, Charles interjected. You'd better be telling me the truth because my father wouldn't be this cordial, Sean retorted. Is that a threat? Andrew inquired through gritted teeth. Sean Cavalier chuckled coldly. I used his intel to find Jake. Do you think he's going to walk in here to talk? Sean retorted. And you are betraying him to us because? Charles probed. Sean glared at him. He is going to kill her. Sean growled through gritted teeth. I doubt there's anything you or anyone can do about that, Sean. We know your father is crazy, Jake said noncommittally. Your entire family is crazy. Your uncle took your wife. Then he turns up dead with his only surviving son. Nobody in their right mind would want to get in the middle of that, Andrew added. You still don't get it, do you? My father is behind everything. He killed Durham. He was the one who helped Travis come to the conclusion that Julia paid someone to kill Durham. Ricky blabbed about Julia wanting Durham gone. My father used that statement to implicate him and made him think he was responsible for Durham's death. Nobody would dare touch Durham except on a directive from a Kimura. He told me himself after I killed Ricky. Julia is a sacrificial lamb. He wants her dead for the final puzzle to fall into place, and he will not stop until she is dead. Otherwise, my grandfather will find out, Sean said through gritted teeth, his voice tinged with frustration and desperation. Jake, Andrew, and Charles watched him with widened gazes before they exchanged glances. None of them ever suspected Henri Cavalier. That's crazy. Why would he do that? Charles was the first to speak. More importantly, why are you telling us? Andrew asked, his eyes dimmed with suspicion. Hawthorne will not help because of their damn pact. He doesn't even like Julia. You guys were once soldiers. I need an ally, damn it, Sean replied in frustration. Ah, an ally. This is a trick, Jake said, nodding his head and acting as if everything he just heard didn't shake him. Really? Sean retorted, glaring at him. Okay, let's say you are telling the truth and you don't sound one bit crazy. We work for Nathaniel Hawthorne now. When he says fetch, we go fetch. That's how we play it. Unless you can get him to help you look for your wife, we can't help you. Sorry, Andrew replied. You guys are useless. Maybe when he starts hunting you down one by one, you'll realize just how screwed your friend here is, Sean said, gesturing to Jake. The pact between the Kimuras and the Hawthornes doesn't cover Jake Darfield. We'll see who needs an ally then, he retorted before pushing past Andrew and walking away down the hallway. I'm going to make sure he leaves, Charles said, trailing after Sean. Andrew waited for about a minute before directing his gaze at Jake. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern lining his tone. He pointed a gun at my head and cocked it. "It triggered me is all. I'm fine. He left here. Alive. That's freaking progress if I can say so myself," Jake reassured him, not breaking eye contact. Andrew nodded. "Good. Now we need to talk to the boss," Andrew said as he walked past Jake into the apartment. As they closed the door, they heard a sharp intake of breath. Looking behind the panel framing the doorway, they found Julia. Her eyes were red from crying, her face streaked with tears, and her chest heaved as she tried to stifle her sobs. Andrew gave Jake a sidelong glance. It was clear she had overheard them and now knew she was Julia Cavalier. "Please don't let them kill me," Julia pleaded. "Why the hell do you think you're here?" Jake retorted, seeing the gleam of pain in her eyes before he turned and walked away. He wanted to comfort her, to promise her they had her, but that wasn't his promise to make. Everything depended on Nathaniel Hawthorne now. They needed to find out if Sean Cavalier had told them the truth before acting on it. Tom Hill had made Andrew's sister disappear before, hiding her from Durham, the mafia scum. They could do the same for Julia. He really wouldn't mind what they could do to keep her safe, even if it meant never seeing her again. He just didn't think he could let them throw her to the wolves, and he was scared shitless of what he might do. But one thing gave him hope. Nathaniel Hawthorne wouldn't like to hear they were played, that Dominic had taken the fall for Henry Cavalier's crime. If there was one thing Jake knew about Nathaniel Hawthorne, it was that he didn't like being made to look like a fool and could be quite vindictive. It was fortunate that Sean Cavalier believed Nathaniel wouldn't lift a finger to help Julia. What he didn't know was that Nathaniel would do just about anything for his wife, Dr. Mrs. Hawthorne. And that was what was keeping Julia alive. "Come," Jake heard Andrew urge as he ushered Julia back into her room. "Let us worry about how to keep you safe while you try and help us by getting strong, okay?" Andrew comforted. Jake almost chuckled in derision. He was giving her false hope when her own husband couldn't even save her. Jake downed 2 shots before Andrew returned. The other man watched as Jake retrieved his gun from the back of his trousers and placed it on the island table. He wanted to ask again if Jake was sure he was fine, but he stopped himself, not wanting to imply he didn't trust Jake's assurance. He took a seat opposite Jake and watched as Jake poured him a drink. "Thanks," Andrew said, downing the drink in one go. He then took out his phone and texted Nathaniel, giving him an update about Sean Cavalier and what the man had said. He waited, thinking Nathaniel would respond immediately. But even though he saw that Nathaniel had received the message, the reply wasn't instant. When Nathaniel finally did respond, he only texted, "See me and come alone." Andrew frowned, thinking that was odd. He responded anyway and then got off the chair. "Charles is going to come back to give you backup just in case. I need to join Anita and Dr. Hawthorne. Anton and Greg are still watching Sean Cavalier. We also have people tailing Henry Cavalier too. I will call you if anything comes up," Andrew said to Jake, who nodded in response. Jake waited for Andrew to leave before locking the main door. He then went into Julia's room and hesitated at the threshold as her sobbing reached his ears. He walked inside and saw her curled up on the bed, shaking with tears. Jake went to sit on the edge of the bed, and she must have noticed because she reared up and flung a pillow at him. "What the hell?" he muttered just before she flew at him, hitting him in the face and hurling curses at him. "You are a freaking jerk. Toxic asshole," she growled, continuing to hit him. Jake managed to seize her by the wrists, trapping her hands behind her back with one hand, holding her wrist like an iron seal. His other hand cupped the nape of her slim neck. "Cut it out," he said through gritted teeth. "Let me go," she growled at him like an angry feline, her eyes spitting daggers at him. "Let me go, Jake," she repeated. "I will gladly let you go when you stop trying to claw my eyes out," he retorted, trying not to look down at her body. He noticed she was no longer wearing the baggy trousers from before, but was now in a loose dress that had ridden up her thighs. With her trapped against his body, sitting on his lap, it was hard not to notice how intimate their position was. "You're such an ass. If you don't like me, why did you even come to save me?" "It was you, right? You were the one who came to save me. Don't bother denying it. I heard the Sean guys say so," Julia retorted angrily. "So what?" Yes, I saved you, Jules. I was following orders. He growled back, watching as pain flashed in her eyes. Why wouldn't you let him have me if you don't want me here? She asked, her voice faint now and filled with anguish. He is my husband, right? She added, pressing her lips together to prevent them from trembling. I did let him have you, Jules. I let every fucking man you wanted to get naked with have you, and would do it again in a heartbeat, but we're trying to save your damn life. That's it, he replied, holding her gaze unflinchingly, letting her see he meant every word. Her chest shook as she let out a shaky breath. Let me go, Jake, she said in a pained tone, her voice barely above a whisper. He did, and she slapped him hard across the face. Fucking witch, he growled, grabbing her again. He trapped her body against his front, holding her hands behind her back to keep her steady until she stopped struggling. Then they both seemed to notice their position, their faces barely an inch apart. She was straddling his legs and was very close to him. Jake, seeking to divert her anger, pulled her close and kissed her passionately. As they adjusted their positions, he gently gripped her hips and pressed against her. Julia quivered in his arms, whimpering with pleasure. He quieted her with a kiss. Back at the Hawthorne household, Nathaniel paced the length of his office as Tom Hill made arrangements that would finally end the cat-and-mouse game they were playing with the Comoras. Andrew's message about Henri Cavalier didn't surprise him, but he was certain all the elaborate ploy was to throw off Samuel Cavalier. He was sure that if Samuel found out the extent to which his son had gone to secure only his line of succession to the Comoras dynasty, he would not hesitate to end the bastard. Dominic might be trash, but he was Samuel Cavalier's trash. After witnessing the crash and Captain's subsequent call, Nathaniel had started to rethink the whole matter. The question of why Henri would allow his nephew's transplantation to go through, even providing donors, and then turn around to blow him and his father up, gnawed at him. The video of Henri stabbing Dominic added to the intrigue, making it somewhat clear that Henri Cavalier was indeed doing cleanup, but he was doing it for himself, not for his son's honor. Julia just happened to be a typical lamb caught up in the ploy. They must have had information that Julia had a record of paying questionable characters to get back at her perceived enemies, making it probable that she could orchestrate a plane bombing. Plus, she was supposed to have a score to settle with the Comoras and was supposedly on the run. The second avenue for cover-up was the police. Of course, giving the order for his men to kill the policemen added another angle. Everyone knows how the police react when they lose one of their own. With Dominic's prior arrest and violation, the police could also be liable for the crash, which meant the captain and his men were in danger now. He had called Captain immediately to let him know he and his men were targets. Knowing the older man had survived long enough to protect himself, Nathaniel decided to focus on getting rid of Julia. The last thing he needed was that bloody bastard using his family for target practice. All right, 12 a.m., we will be waiting, Tom Hill was saying on the phone before he concluded the call. Turning to face Nathaniel, he said, Done. We are ready. Nathaniel nodded and stopped pacing. You are doing the right thing, Nate, Tom reassured him. The corner of Nathaniel's lips tweaked in amusement. He doubted he was doing the right thing, but it would soothe his conscience, so he would be able to look Aria in the eye and tell her it was over. Shortly after Andrew walked in, Nathaniel saw the uneasiness in his eyes as he looked from Tom to him. You asked to see me, boss, Andrew said. Yeah, sit down, Andrew, Nathaniel invited. Andrew's eyebrows furrowed as he was asked. Back at Madison, Jake was able to subdue Julia. By the time he was done with her, she'd fallen asleep in his arms. He didn't know he had dozed off himself until a knock vibrating through the apartment, followed by the chime of the doorbell, woke him up. Opening his eyes, he peered at her resting face. Slowly tilting her face up, he kissed her before disentangling himself from her. He picked up his clothes, put them on, and pulled the covers over her body before leaving the room. Hey, Charles greeted as he strode in. News? Jake asked. Charles shook his head as he headed to the kitchen area. Jake let out a sigh. Much later, Anita returned, carrying shopping bags alongside the guards assigned to her, and announced what she was going to make for dinner. I'm making lasagna tonight, she declared with a grin, her eyes twinkling. Layers of rich, creamy ricotta, gooey mozzarella, savory marinara sauce, simmered to perfection, and perfectly seasoned ground beef, all tucked between sheets of tender pasta. It's going to be a meal you'll dream about. Jake smiled to himself as Charles teased her about domesticating them with her plans to make them fat. Anita giggled, throwing a kitchen towel at him, which he caught midair. "It's not going to work." "We are on to you, madam," Charles said with dramatic flair. "You think you can win us over with your culinary wizardry? Huh, we won't be fooled by your delicious traps, but for the record, I like my lasagna with extra cheese." He winked. Jake bursts out laughing along with the rest of the men. It had become standard procedure for only 3 guards to stay with Anita in her apartment after 10 p.m., but by 10:30 p.m., Jake couldn't help but notice that 3 additional guards had joined them, despite the fact that Charles was already there. Anita had given them all quite a treat, and despite Julia's earlier state, Anita had managed to get her to join them for dinner. He noticed that Julia did all she could to avoid looking at him, but there were times when he caught her gaze on him, and she would turn red in the face and look away. Jake knew exactly what she was thinking. He'd made her scream his name several times earlier as he took her without being gentle. He was certain she must be embarrassed that she had given in despite being hopping mad at him. Anita led Julia back into her room a few minutes before 10 p.m. and had gone to bed herself. Jake couldn't resist disappearing for a few minutes to check on Julia while the other men were having a discussion about sports. He'd thought she would be asleep, but she'd sat up as soon as he entered. Jake closed the door behind him and perched on the edge of the bed, holding her gaze. Then she hurried to her knees, cupped his jaw, and kissed him, hurriedly pulling off his clothes. Jake let her have her way with him. By 11 p.m., everyone had gone to sleep except for him and Charles. Andrew was still a no-show, and that was getting him on edge. Andrew had developed the habit of showing up to have dinner with Anita and at least going to the room with her until she'd fallen asleep before leaving, or staying up to guard alongside the men. Charles often teased him about going in with Anita to give her the sleeping pill before joining them, causing the older man to blush, which always gave them a good laugh. At exactly 30 minutes to midnight, a knock sounded at the door, followed by Andrew's signature tap. For some reason, Jake's heart picked up speed as Charles opened the door for Andrew, who then strode in with Jaden, a female Marine they'd served with, and Tom Hill. Jake released a shaky breath, knowing this was it. This was Nathaniel Hawthorne's decision. He sat down and managed to respond to greetings like his regular self, while Jaden exchanged pleasantries with him and the other men before Andrew led her into Julia's room. Jake wanted to ask questions, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Shortly after, Julia was led out wearing a black cardigan over black pants that resembled military combat gear, but looked like practical clothing for camping in the woods. Over the cardigan, she wore a thick, bulky jacket that made her look odd in the attire. A cap was pulled down her forehead, obscuring her face. Jake noticed she was also wearing knee and elbow guards, and her ankles were strapped with braces on both legs, not just the broken one. Overall, her attire seemed oddly protective, and he wondered where they were taking her. Andrew handed her 2 backpacks, helping her wear one in front, while Jaden wore the other on her back. Jake saw Julia throw an anxious gaze at him. The fear on her face was palpable. He swallowed hard, his fists clenching by his sides. "Okay, Jaden, she is all yours." "Jake, Charles, you are coming with me," Andrew said, and Jake had no choice but to obey. He looked away and walked past Jaden and Julia, following Charles with Andrew in the lead. Downstairs, they entered a jeep driven by Aiden, and Jake noticed Aiden's careful attention to ensuring they weren't being followed. To his surprise, they went through an alley, and Aiden stopped at a spot shrouded in darkness. The door on the left side was pulled open, and a tall figure slipped in. It was Nathaniel Hawthorne. Jake's heart skipped a beat. "Boss," Jake and Charles greeted him. Nathaniel merely nodded in response. Jake checked to be certain he had taken his gun, knowing whatever this was, it must be a sting operation or something. The jeep went out of the city to a remote park, and Aiden parked the car. No one moved or spoke. Jake could hear his heart racing in the wall of his chest. Then, up ahead, he saw a black van pull up. and someone dressed exactly as Julia had earlier was pushed out of the van before it zoomed off. Jake's heartbeat increased pace as he tried to act unbothered while watching the scene ahead of them. Julia got up from the floor, dusting herself off. Her cap had fallen, revealing her face. He watched as she picked up her glasses, only to find them broken. He watched her dash off a tear, or perhaps it was just the watering of her left eye. His heart almost stopped when another vehicle approached the scene and Sean Cavalier stepped out of it. Jake watched as he hesitated at the sight of her, seeing Julia freeze in place and Sean gingerly walking up to her. The open shock on his face made Jake clench his jaw. Sean raised his hand with an evident attempt to touch her face, but he stopped and said something to her. She just stood there, looking at him. Jake caught the movement at the corner of his eye as Nathaniel glanced at his wristwatch before saying, "Andrew, ask if they are here." Jake blinked, wondering what the hell that meant. "Are Henry's men here?" Andrew said into a mouthpiece, and then Jake saw Julia's body jerk. "No!" Sean Cavalier's agonized scream rang through the air. Jake couldn't look away as more bullets seemed to hit Julia. Sean tried to stay to carry her or hold her, but he could not as shots were fired around him, separating him from Julia. Jake watched as Julia crumpled to the ground, and Sean was forced to run back to the vehicle by his men. They forcefully put him in the vehicle that brought him. The Jeep moved and left. Aiden slowly backed the Jeep, turning away from the scene. Jake didn't want to look back. He didn't want to see her lying there lifeless and left to the wolves. Jake clung to one belief, that Nathaniel Hawthorne wasn't a cruel man. Whatever was happening must be for a reason. He couldn't fathom Nathaniel working in cahoots with Henri Cavalier to have Julia executed. He wanted to speak, to ask them to explain what he was missing, but he found he was scared to voice the question, scared shitless of the answer he might receive. He soon noticed that they were heading to the Hawthorne helipad. Upon getting there, they left the Jeep to board an aircraft. Jake sat beside Aiden as Andrew co-piloted with Nathaniel Hawthorne. Soon enough, they were up in the air. Aiden took a sidelong glance at Jake, but Jake didn't look at him. He was trying to stay composed and see where this was leading. Soon enough, the craft hovered over Montauk on Long Island, a state park that was initially a coastal defense station during World War II, later used by the Air Force and decommissioned in the 1980s. It still had many of the old military structures standing, and Nathaniel lowered the craft to a remote end that had been completely abandoned for years. They all exited the aircraft and waited. Jake stood with Aiden and watched as Nathaniel came to stand beside him. "Thank you, Jake," Nathaniel remarked. "What for, boss?" Jake made himself ask. "For trusting me," Nathaniel replied, and patted him on the back of his shoulder before striding away to wait as another craft was lowered to the ground a few meters away. Jake released a deep breath and slowly relaxed his posture, knowing he was right. Whatever he saw was not what he'd thought. Tom Hill got down from the craft, followed by Jaden and Jordan, who helped carry Julia down from the craft. She was unconscious and on a stretcher. Jake didn't move as he watched Tom Hill extend a hand to help Dr. Hawthorne down from the craft, and then Anita. For some reason, the sight of Nathaniel Hawthorne's wife convinced him that Julia was alive. When he lowered his face, he felt tears drop from his eyes. He let out a shaky sigh. "Christ," he muttered to himself. He couldn't truly understand his emotions towards Julia Davies, aka Giselle. He just knew he really enjoyed having her, and he didn't want her dead. He waited for Julia to be carried inside one of the buildings that looked like a warehouse before attempting to follow, but Andrew stopped him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Andrew gestured to a guard manning the entrance to shut it, but not before Jake caught a glimpse of the inside. One side of the expansive space seemed to have been turned into a surgery room. The guard shut the door, and Andrew, Aiden, Charles, and Jake were left outside to be on the lookout. Andrew started to load his gun, and Aiden and Charles did the same. "I'm really proud of you, Jake. You made me feel like a fucking proud peacock today," Andrew remarked, his voice low and deep. "I would really appreciate you guys filling me in on why you are all so proud of me, though," Jake replied, his voice equally low. Aiden and Charles chuckled. The boss wasn't sure how you would take the plan, hence why he made it between me, him, Tom, Dr. Hawthorne, and Jaden. Andrew replied, So then Charles and Aidan have no clue as to what is happening here too? Jake probed, surprised. Well, I know the boss, so I wasn't worried. Were you? Charles said to Jake, who blinked and then stuttered a reply. 100% sure he wouldn't want to sit back in the middle of nowhere in obviously dangerous terrain, just to watch his ex get executed and then make us watch it for sure, Jake said, making the other three laugh. You're such a bad liar, Aidan teased, nudging him in the side. I have one question. Was she shot by real bullets? Charles asked. It has to be real, since it was Henri Cavalier's bounty hunters that shot her, and they wanted her to be very dead. Andrew answered so casually, Jake's heart skipped a beat. Charles and Aidan gaped at Andrew. Jaden shot her first so she could go down faster. According to the wound she sustained, Henri's bastards only got one shot, at her shoulder. Jaden aimed for her left thigh, where she strapped a protective guard against the bullet, and two more to her back. Andrew continued. You are telling me she was really shot? With real bullets? Jake growled in disbelief. Yeah, how else were we supposed to make it seem real and that she was dead? Andrew replied with furrowed brows. Well, I would expect them to go check if she was truly dead, Aidan asked, in disbelief. They tried, but the boss had already made arrangements for a passerby to call the cops. They arrived right on time, and of course Jaden was using anyone who got close to Julia's body for target practice, seemingly protecting her bounty. The instruction given to Henry's bounty hunters was to make sure they killed her on sight, take a picture, and send it to Henry's second-in-command. Jaden delivered that. But right now, they believe the police have Julia's body, which Jaden got instructions to blow up, Andrew said, grinning. Damn, what a plan, Charles muttered in awe. You guys shot her with real fucking bullets, Jake repeated, not quite sure if he heard right and still utterly shocked by the revelation. Duh, Aidan replied, as Andrew threw him a puzzled look. How else should we have done it? Got any ideas? Andrew asked. Jake couldn't think of any other way to make it seem real without it being real, but damn it, he figured she'd gone through enough already. He stood back with his back to the warehouse doors, looking straight ahead as he pulled out his gun, holding onto it by his side. After about a minute, he asked, how did Sean find out where she would be? Andrew scoffed. You've forgotten that Henri Cavalier's men were once led by Sean. He still has a few loyal ones among them. The boss knew he would show up. The point was to kill Julia and at the same time, give her a new life, if she so desired. They're currently concealing her scars. Dr. Hawthorne isn't undertaking complete facial surgery, but she believes the altered features will result in a new appearance, aiding in the next phase. Jake furrowed his brows and glanced at him sideways. Isn't she going to disappear? He asked. Oh, she will disappear and reappear as Giselle Davies, the long-lost daughter John never met. She's going to take over what's remaining of the Davies fortune. Captain has created a totally new identity for her. As of now, there's no Julia Davies. She is dead. In case you haven't gotten that from the elaborate showdown, Andrew replied, his voice low. The information meant only for their ears. I'm sure you will agree now that it's a great plan, Aidan chimed in. And boss, trust her not to screw this up, Jake asked, his heart racing with hope. With or without her memory, Julia or Giselle, whatever she chose to be, wants to stay alive. If she opens her mouth, she is inviting death. It would be all on her then, Andrew replied. Jake nodded and looked away, utterly relieved that Julia would be fine if she didn't screw it up. And like Andrew said, it would all be on her then, because Nathaniel Hawthorne had risked himself and his family to save her. His heart constricted at the thought. Why do you think he's doing this? Jake inquired, his voice low and tinged with emotion. I'm surprised you need to ask, Charles replied. I just need to hear someone say it out loud, he responded, his voice almost inaudible. Because every time Nathaniel Hawthorne says, no one fucking touches my family, he means his immediate family by blood, Tom Hill and his family, and us. You, me, Aidan, Charles, Anton, Greg, Jordan, every single one of us who has been with him for as long as he can remember. He helped her for his wife. He is keeping her alive for you. Andrew explained. Jake let out a shaky breath. A companionable silence ensued, and then, after about a minute, he said, I don't know if we can trust her, Andrew. Don't worry, boss intends to make it pretty clear to her how things are going to go from here on, Andrew replied. Come on now, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. No one believed you. Jake should be let loose around sane people. Yet here you are, acting like a normal guy, acting, Aiden quipped, trying to lighten the mood. Charles and Andrew burst out laughing. Jake elbowed Aiden, making him laugh. Speaking of the pot calling the kettle black, Jake retorted. Aiden gasped in mock outrage. Take it back, I'm nothing like you, he replied. Yeah, right, says the guy who goes into a murderous rage every time he is cornered, Jake teased with a raised eyebrow. Hey, emphasis on cornered, Aiden responded, glowering at him. Charles and Andrew chuckled, enjoying the bantering. In the middle of the whispered arguments, Andrew let out a sigh, glad that Jake was handling the whole situation with Julia with some level of calmness. Meanwhile, inside the warehouse, Aria, working alongside Anita, deftly stitched up Julia, focusing first on her fresh wound to make sure she was stable and not losing blood. Once she was certain the bleeding was under control, Aria began working on concealing Julia's scars, starting with the one she had gotten from her attempt at kidnapping the twins, and then moving to her face. She examined the dent in Julia's eye socket, knowing she needed to fill in the damaged area to restore its appearance. Anita handed her a scalpel, and she carefully cut a small patch of skin from Julia's thigh, choosing a spot that had her birthmark, thinking it would be a great distinguishing feature to add to her altered face. She then sutured this skin into place, covering the dent in Julia's eye socket. Afterwards, she moved to the back of Julia's head, where another scar marred her scalp. She needed a different type of skin for this area, one that would better match the texture of the scalp. She decided to take a small patch from Julia's pubic region, a choice made to ensure the graft would be hidden, and the skin type would blend well. With precise movements, Aria grafted this skin onto the scarred area, ensuring it integrated seamlessly with the surrounding tissue. Hours passed, and Aria finally stepped back, her work complete. Julia's wounds were closed, and her scars were concealed as best as possible given the circumstances. Aria hoped that the physical changes would help Julia as she navigated the dangerous and complex world she had thrust herself into. Giving Anita a side glance, she nodded in appreciation. They turned to the makeshift wash basin, removed their gloves, and discarded them in a polythene bag before thoroughly washing their hands. While Anita administered a pain-relieving injection directly into Julia's veins, Aria stepped behind a hospital privacy screen to change from her scrubs into regular clothes. She disposed of the scrubs in the same polythene bag as her used gloves. When Nathaniel, Tom Hill, and Andrew approached her about proceeding with Julia's surgery, Tom Hill brought up the idea of concealing her gunshot wounds to increase the likelihood of starting a new life with a new identity. They mentioned that those after Julia might pursue her when she eventually resurfaces for an identity check, and gunshot wounds would be a telltale sign. Aria immediately agreed, but she hadn't anticipated the subsequent phone call from Tom Hill. He informed her that Henri Cavalier had sent bounty hunters after Julia, and she had been shot again, requiring her help. Though she could sense they were withholding some information, she understood it was to protect her. Knowing that Julia was entangled with dangerous individuals, she appreciated their collective efforts to keep her safe, as she had requested. Anita ensured Julia was properly covered before she withdrew the privacy screen they had used to shield themselves from the others for the surgery. Nathaniel, Tom, and Jaden stepped forward. Thanks, Anita, Nathaniel remarked, his eyes meeting the other woman's as she smiled and nodded. He then turned his attention to Aria, who emerged from behind another privacy screen in her regular clothes. Nathaniel immediately drew her into a hug and pressed a kiss on the top of her head. Thanks, my love, he whispered against her hair. Aria nodded in acknowledgement. Well done, Dr. Hawthorne, and you too, Anita, Tom Hill remarked. Nathaniel directed his gaze at Julia, whose entire head was now covered in bandages, except for a narrow space left open for her eyes, nose, and lips. And although she was covered from feet to chest, the bandages wrapped around her shoulders were visible. How long before she wakes up? Nathaniel asked, glancing at his watch. The anesthetics should wear off any time now. Let's say 10 minutes max, Anita replied. Nathaniel nodded. Good, he responded before turning to Jaden. I believe you and your team can handle post-surgery care? Kurt. The other lady nodded, crossing her arms over her chest. Of course, boss, she replied. Good. Now we just need to have a word with Giselle, before she is all yours, Nathaniel remarked, laying emphasis on the name, a note of mockery lining his tone. Or Julia, Aria chimed in, making everyone direct their gazes at her. She shrugged, darting her gaze from Nathaniel to Tom Hill, then to Jaden, and back to Nathaniel. Patients with trauma to the head as a result of a violent act often experience memory recall triggered by similar traumatic events. This phenomenon, known as state-dependent memory retrieval, occurs due to the brain's encoding and storage processes. When the brain is exposed to circumstances reminiscent of the original trauma, it can prompt the recall of associated memories. Therefore, it is plausible that Julia, experiencing a comparable level of stress or trauma, might undergo memory retrieval in this case, she explained, gesturing to Julia. That's even better, Nathaniel replied, a cold gleam in his eyes. It's imperative she understands why she got my help and just where I would draw the line, he remarked. Tom Hill nodded in agreement. With that resolve, Aria couldn't help but hope that Julia remains as Giselle for her survival. She exchanged a worried glance with Anita. A few hours earlier, back on Madison Avenue, when Andrew entered Julia's room with an older man who introduced himself as Tom Hill and a woman dressed like a G.I. Joe, Julia had gingerly gotten out of bed. Her eyes darted from one to the other, but finally settled on Andrew, the only person she recognized. She'd glanced at the entrance, expecting Jake to come in, but he didn't. Her heart raced with fear, her intuitive senses on high alert, warning her that something major was about to happen. It was even more terrifying that Jake hadn't accompanied Andrew, especially after the confrontation with the Sean guy, who was supposedly her husband. She hoped they hadn't decided to throw her out because of Sean's threat to Jake. Julia recalled that she hadn't felt the slightest curiosity or willingness to see Sean, let alone expose herself to him. The only person she felt comfortable and safe with was Jake. This made more sense after Sean confirmed that she and Jake had a history, and that Jake had saved her. Hearing this confirmation made her heart swell with emotions for Jake, but she hated that, for some reason, he had taken out his frustration on her, lashing out as if everything was her fault. Maybe it was, but she couldn't remember. And it hurt that he would treat her like that. It was even more embarrassing that, despite his behavior, she still couldn't resist him. Deep down, she suspected she had strong feelings for Jake Darfield. The problem was she couldn't comprehend why she had once deemed him unworthy of her heart, or why she had chosen to marry Sean, who was clearly the wrong choice for her. Giselle, Andrew began, glancing from her to Tom Hill. I don't know if you remember Mr. Hill? He added. Julia's interest was piqued, and she settled her gaze on the older gentleman with interest. She gave it a minute, trying to see if any image would appear in her head, but it remained blank. She slowly shook her head, offering the man an apologetic smile. The man looked at her keenly with an astute gleam in his eyes, as if she were a specimen that fascinated him, and he was trying to decipher. All right, this is Mr. Tom Hill, our boss Nathaniel Hawthorne's lawyer, and this is Jaden White. They're here to assist with your transition to a new identity, Andrew explained. Julia nodded, realizing that Andrew was referring to her taking on a new identity to protect her from Sean's family. Thank you, Mr. Hill, and you too, Miss Jaden White, Julia started to say, but the other woman interjected, Please call me Jaden. Julia nodded again in acknowledgement. Tom Hill stepped forward, still fascinated by the idea of Julia losing her memory, but he couldn't see any sign that she remotely recognized him. She looked and sounded different, which was unsettling. Even her mannerisms had changed. It was as if this woman was a different person entirely, making her situation even more pitiable. He found it hard to be cold and withdrawn with a woman who seemed visibly scared of the strange faces invading her life, compared to the calculative person she used to be. It made him uneasy because he didn't quite know how to act around her. He merely nodded in acknowledgement of her gratitude. What do you need me to do? Julia asked, her voice low and raspy. I'm afraid we have to limit the information we give you so you can react as naturally as possible. Tom Hill replied, making her direct her gaze at him. She swallowed softly, shifted on her feet, and ignored the ache in her ankle. She suddenly felt the need to fold her arms against her chest. Then she looked at Andrew and watched as he held her gaze. "You have to face Sean Cavalier. It's important," Andrew supplied. But weren't you trying to keep me away from him to save my life?" Julia replied, stuttering in agitation. Her words came out slurry, exposing her difficulty. She paused in frustration, helpless tears clouding her eyes as she lowered her face, feeling a tad embarrassed. Tom Hill couldn't help but feel sorry for Julia. She seemed so helpless, unaware of what she had done to find herself in this hot mess, yet forced to endure it anyway. Andrew stepped forward, but he didn't reach out to touch her. "We're trying to keep you permanently safe, but it's important that you meet with your husband to show yourself to him, and then we'll take it from there," he said in a reassuring tone. "You have nothing to be afraid of. I'll be watching over you to protect you, but you must go through this phase to make sure your disappearance afterward is believable," Jaden added, with a comforting smile. Julia raised her face to look at her, then at Andrew before meeting Tom Hill's gaze, as if searching for reassurance. "Do you trust Andrew?" Tom Hill questioned. Julia nodded without hesitation, remembering that he had helped de-escalate the tension between Sean and Jake, and he was Jake's and Anita's friend, who had been there for her since the beginning. "Good. Then trust him to take care of you," Tom Hill said. "And me by extension, because we're going to be inseparable," Jaden interjected. Julia nodded, pressing her lips together in a semblance of a smile. "Okay, then let's get you into more protective clothing," Jaden announced as she lifted the bag she had brought with her from the floor and gestured to the side door which led to the bathroom. While changing her clothes, Julia's left eye started to water and she attempted to hide it. However, Jaden evidently noticed and asked, "Are you crying? I promise you, you are going to be fine." Julia darted a side glance at her, then looked away, quickly muttering, "No, I'm not crying," before pausing and adding, "My left eye is bad." An awkward silence followed before Jaden responded, "I'm sorry, I didn't know that. When this is all over, we will find a solution to it. I'm sure the boss wouldn't mind." Julia threw her a quick glance, nodded, and stood still as Jaden helped strap her up, assisting her with ankle braces on both legs. "Why do you think he is helping me?" Julia suddenly asked, causing Jaden to pause her actions and look up at her. "I mean, you all call him the boss, and he's not my family," Julia quickly added. "I believe it's because you are family friends and Dr. Hawthorne is your doctor. I've heard she is fiercely protective of her patients." "You are lucky to have her," Jaden replied with a smile, and nothing in her eyes suggested she was lying. Julia was always trying to detect if any of them were lying to her, and although she noticed some evasiveness at times, they all seemed forthright with her. The only person who didn't always sugarcoat things for her was Jake. Sometimes she didn't know whether she hated it or preferred it. Having no memories of her past life was terrifying, although she struggled not to show it. She took comfort in the knowledge that when she was herself, she had chosen to be with Jake, and now again, she had chosen to be with him. He seemed to be the only person who bridged her past and present and still made her feel safe. And that's how she knew he must be important to her. Even though she must have done something terrible to hurt him, and she only wished she could be given the time to fix that, because she really wanted him in her life for now and always. Her heart ached and her eyes watered, but this time they were real tears. Afterward, when she was ushered outside and saw Jake standing on one side of the living room, she looked at him, hoping for some assurance, especially when Andrew and Jaden strapped a backpack to her front and back. Profound fear clawed at her, the fear that she might not get to see Jake again once they took her away. The thought made her feel as if she was underwater with a short supply of air. She really didn't want to go anywhere without Jake. So, when Andrew called out to Jake and Charles, telling them that they would be coming with him, a glimmer of hope bloomed in her mind. She figured wherever she was going, Andrew must be going too, hence why he wanted Jake and Charles with him. But she soon realized that when Jaden said they would be inseparable, it meant she would be glued to her side. While Andrew, Charles, Jake, and Aiden left the apartment through the exit door, Julia was lowered to the back of the house, through a window, and strapped to Jaden. Her choice of clothing made sense then. She couldn't help but notice that it seemed she was being smuggled out of the building and the area altogether. She was shepherded into a van and was the only one left to sit at the back while Jaden went to the front seat to get behind the wheel. "Settle down now. It's going to take us a minute," she said before starting the van. The back of the van was plunged into darkness, and she sat there silently praying that she would get to see Jake again. In her bid to keep him close, she relived their time together, reveling in the memories of how he loved her thoroughly without holding back, making her whimper for more and more of him. Letting out a shaky breath, she wanted to ask Jaden if she would be seeing Jake again, but she couldn't bring herself to voice the words. Julia wasn't sure how long they had driven, but they got to a place where Jaden parked the van and joined her in the back while someone else seemed to have taken the reins of the van. Julia grew worried as they made another stop, and two people wearing ski masks also joined them in the back of the van. None of them spoke to her. With a sense of urgency surrounding Jaden, Julia watched as she deftly strapped up. She wore a ski mask, put on padded leather gloves, and slung over her shoulder a long, narrow case that resembled a guitar carrier, but had a distinct shape that looked suspiciously like a rifle case before she hit the interior panel of the van, the resounding sound making her flinch in the enclosed space. The van slowed, and when she made to disembark, even with the van still on the move, Julia panicked. "You are getting off!" she cried, her anxiety evident in her voice. "Trust me, that's it, Giselle. You've got to trust me," the other woman said, and then jumped, rolling off of the road into the side woods. She then got up and started to run, disappearing into the woods. One of the people in ski masks pulled the door closed. Then, after about 5 minutes without warning, they lunged at her, trying to cover her head with a sack. "What are you doing?" Julia screamed in terror. "Get off of me," she yelled. "Calm down and brace yourself," was the only warning she heard before she found herself pushed. Her heart lunged hard against the wall of her chest, confused and scared at the turn of events. Then she landed on the hard ground and quickly pulled off her hood, causing her cap and glasses to fall off. She cursed as she realized she had landed safely on a bed of grass and wasn't tossed out as she had imagined. Andrew's, Mr. Hill's, and Jaden's words replayed in her head, and she took a deep sigh as she started to grasp that she wasn't in danger, and it must be some kind of ploy to get her to the site where she was supposed to meet Sean. She dusted herself off and, with the help of her good eye, searched for her glasses in the underbrush. "Come on!" She groaned in annoyance when she saw that her glasses had broken. "Wonderful," she muttered, close to tears. The sound of an approaching car caught her attention. Then a man disembarked from the jeep and hesitated a few feet from her. She could tell the man knew her, judging by the show of horror in his eyes at the sight of her. Julia held her chin up, thinking if this man was her husband, the man she had left Jake for, he must truly be remarkable, and must have commanded some level of emotions in her for her to leave Jake for him, judging by how Jake seemed to light up her world, even with a glance. But nothing. Julia felt nothing by looking at the man. There was no memory spark, no passion spark, no emotional trigger. He was just like any man she had seen in the past weeks, unknown faces yielding no recollection whatsoever. "My God, Julia, what have they done to you, my darling? I am so sorry. I am so sorry I couldn't help you," Sean said, his voice low and agonizing, which made Julia sad. She figured the man must have feelings for her and felt helpless to save her from whatever had happened to her. But Jake had. Jake and the man they called the boss had helped her escape from the family of her husband, who wanted her dead. She figured if they hadn't, she wouldn't be alive. The look of horror on Sean's face as he looked at her made her feel ugly, and she felt the urge to turn away or hide her face from his scrutiny. Because she knew he was her husband, she wanted, or rather felt the desperate need, for him to kindle something in her, but he was unable to, and that made her somehow know that she had married this man not for the obvious reasons, and her heart hurt at the thought of the woman she must have been, the woman who Jake disliked so much. A gasp escaped her lips as something hard hit the back of her leg. Pain so profound shot through her before she could blink or process what was happening. Another one hit her shoulder, and then her back, and then the back of her other leg. "No!" She heard Sean cry. It dawned on her that it was bullets. Someone or someones were firing at the two of them, but Sean didn't seem to be hit. It appeared she was the target. 2 men came to force him away from her as she collapsed to the floor, excruciating pain rushing through her. "Jake," she muttered. And before she hit the ground, a flicker of images appeared in her head of Jake and her in his car making love. "Jake, please don't stop," she heard herself cry out in pleasure. "Let's take this elsewhere then." His familiar deep voice resounded in her head. Then, like grains of sand being blown away by the breeze, the memories disintegrated, and she found herself in a ditch, and in Jake's arms. "I got you. Stay with me," his voice comforted. "Jake," she muttered again, clinging tightly to the idea of him holding her in his safe embrace as she let darkness take her. At the state park in Montauk on Long Island, Nathaniel, Tom Hill, Aria, and Anita waited anxiously for Julia to wake up, the blaring of the heart monitor alerting them to her wakefulness. Julia's body jerked violently as she relived the incident in the park, remembering how Sean had been pulled away, how he had allowed it, abandoning her and leaving her there to die, and how she had longed for Jake to come and save her again. "Giselle!" Dr. Hawthorne's familiar voice called out like a beckoning lighthouse in a storm. Julia's eyes flicked open, her chest heaving as she took labored breaths. Anita and Aria held her down with Jaden's help. Julia's eyes darted from Anita to Dr. Hawthorne and then to Jaden. Tears blurred her vision as she tried to speak. "You left me," she said, her voice low and hoarse. "Calm down, Giselle. You are safe now. It is over. You are safe," Dr. Hawthorne repeated softly, her voice warm and soothing. "You left me," Julia kept saying. Aria glanced at Jaden, a frown furrowing her eyebrows. Jaden shifted uncomfortably before meeting Julia's gaze. "It was a plan to give you a chance at a new life. I had to hide so you or Kimura wouldn't know that I was there," Jaden replied, and then went ahead to explain the plan in detail now that it was over. "Every one of us was there, Giselle," Jaden concluded. "Including Jake?" Julia asked hesitantly. Jaden nodded. "Yes, including Jake, Andrew, Charles, everyone. We were all there, looking out for you, waiting to see it end so you could have a second chance," Jaden said. Julia nodded in understanding and started to cry. Tom Hill turned away, unable to watch. It was heartbreaking when she directed her gaze at Aria and whispered, "I thought you all left me to die. I thought Jaden left me there to die, Dr. Hawthorne." Even Nathaniel looked away. Aria gently stroked Julia's hand and reassured her. "It's over now. Now you just need to get better and start a new life." Julia nodded, and Anita wiped away a tear as she helped Julia dab at her eyes so her tears wouldn't soak her bandages. "Now tell me, Giselle, do you remember anything? Especially after seeing Sean Cavalier?" Aria asked, giving her a keen scrutiny. She nodded. Aria's heart raced as she darted a quick glance at the screen stationed just by the bed showing Julia's brain imaging. The sectional colors used to differentiate different parts of the brain bloomed into life. Nathaniel had wanted them not just to take her word for it, but to see that she was telling the truth when they finally asked her, and Aria had conceded to using brain imaging to detect her thoughts. Aria noticed how Julia hesitated, fidgeting as she briefly lowered her gaze. She moved closer, and when the other woman raised her eyes, Aria gave her a questioning gaze. "Don't worry, you can tell me. Do you remember your childhood or recent events?" Aria asked in a voice that was almost a whisper. Julia slowly shook her head. "Oh, okay, but you remember something or somehow?" Aria probed. Julia nodded, Aria's lips stretched into a smile. "Was it Jake?" Anita whispered. Julia nodded. Aria's smile brightened. "Something you guys did together?" Anita asked again with a teasing tug at the corner of her lips. Julia nodded. "Was that it?" Aria added. She nodded. The imaging indicated she was telling the truth with colors blooming in sections of her brain, but the section which should indicate that she was currently remembering whatever she recalled was just grey. "Do you still know what the memory was?" Aria asked hesitantly, knowing the answer even before she shook her head. Fresh tears welled in Julia's eyes. "Oh, girl," Anita cooed with pity. "But I know how it made me feel," Julia replied, her voice soft and low. "Tell us," Anita urged. "Safe." "It made me feel safe," she whispered. Aria nodded and realized she was crying. She quickly wiped the tears away and nodded, giving her a smile. "Don't worry, it's a good start," Aria reassured. After Aria, Anita, and Jaden stepped back from the bed, Nathaniel and Tom Hill stepped forward. Nathaniel studied Julia, who looked at him without any hint of recognition. He didn't know whether to be pleased or offended, especially since she could clearly remember Jake. The thought made the corner of his lips tug into a smile. He had heard of patients with memory loss, clinging only to memories that made them feel safe, blocking out all other ugliness, and since Julia's life was a hell of a pile of ugliness, he could somewhat understand why her memories would be elusive. But ultimately, he was glad it was over, or would soon be. "Babe," Nathaniel called to Aria, who gave him a sidelong glance before letting out a sigh and returning her gaze to Julia. "Jaden, get ready to leave," Nathaniel instructed. "Yes, boss," Jaden replied. The term boss made Julia look at Nathaniel, realizing he must be the boss they all talked about, the one who had given Jake the order to save her. Catching Julia's eyes on him, Nathaniel strode closer to the bed to stand by the foot of it, with Tom Hill to his left. "We must leave you now, but Jaden will take good care of you," Aria said to Julia. Panic surged in Julia's eyes, and Aria quickly added, "Don't worry. No more dangerous stunts." Then she paused and looked at Nathaniel. "No more dangerous stunts, okay?" She directed the last part at Nathaniel, who nodded. "You have my word," Nathaniel replied. Aria refocused her attention on Julia and continued, "Take care of yourself, and remember what we discussed about you living your best life." Julia gingerly nodded. Though her hesitation was evident, Aria could see she was afraid, but there was nothing more they could do. Nathaniel gestured to Tom Hill, who beckoned to Aria and Anita, leading them out of the warehouse. Jake, Andrew, Aidan, and Charles quickly stepped aside as Dr. Hawthorne and Anita were led outside. Jake watched as Jaden approached a van, knowing Dr. Hawthorne must have finished with the surgery, and Jaden would be taking Julia away shortly. He silently hoped that he would get a chance to say goodbye to her. "Jake!" Nathaniel called from inside the warehouse, and Jake's heart skipped a beat as he hurried inside. "Boss," he said as he came to stand about 5 inches away to Nathaniel's right, trying not to stare at Julia on the bed. Nathaniel walked to stand by the other side of Julia's bed and slipped his hands into the pockets of his trousers. "I understand you've lost your memory and are scared, but both I and Jake standing here know the kind of woman you are. I understand you have gone through a traumatic event that may have altered your personality, but I want you to look at Jake very well and know that you don't deserve him. You don't deserve my protection or his. You don't deserve us sparing your life, yet we are doing it," Nathaniel remarked. "Why?" Julia forced herself to ask, her heart breaking at the man's words. It was true then. She was a terrible person. She wished they would offer her another opportunity, much like the chance they were providing her to start anew. "Why did we help?" Nathaniel repeated for clarity. "Yes," Julia replied, "because we are good people despite what you are. That's why. But I need you to understand something. All these things that happened to you were a result of what you did to yourself, and we helped, out of the goodness of our hearts. Plus, we don't like the Camorra as much, especially the one after you. Henri Cavalier is Sean Cavalier's father, in case you don't know. He is a mean bastard who is capable of blowing up his own brother and killing his nephews. My family has years of experience of protecting ourselves from the likes of him. You, on the other hand, have Sean Cavalier, who is only an extension of his father. I want you to remember that he failed where we triumphed. So, if you decide to go back to your old ways of scheming and just being plain evil, and decide again to come after my family, which includes Jake, I wouldn't need to do anything but stand back and let them make a meal off of you. If you so much as do anything to put Jake in danger, not to mention getting him targeted or harmed in any way, you would have me to contend with. Understand?" Nathaniel said, holding her gaze with a cold, firm stance so she understood her predicament. "I will never do anything to betray Jake's family, or do anything to bring him into harm's way," Julia replied in a shaking voice. "Good. I intend to pave your way into reinventing yourself and then coming back to take over what was once your father's and protect you from here on as long as you don't violate my condition. Jaden will take you from here and out of the country to Russia. You will stay there until you are well and ready to return. I would advise you to lie low and not attract attention. Do not do anything without informing Jaden, and if anything happens to compromise you or her, we will get you out of there. Jaden will train you on what to do. Now take care, Giselle, Nathaniel said and started to walk away. Sir? Julia called after him. Nathaniel paused, a tad surprised at how she addressed him. It felt weird, but he remembered that to her, he was just a helper. Looking over his shoulder at her, he met her gaze and she said, "Thank you. Thank you for everything." Nathaniel nodded and took a glance at Jake, then said, "We are leaving in 3 minutes," and kept walking. "Thank you, boss," he replied, feeling a mix of emotions. He appreciated Nathaniel's protectiveness and the lengths he was willing to go to safeguard their interests. He prayed that Julia would, for once, have the good sense not to mess up this opportunity. "Jake," Julia called, drawing him out of his thoughts. He moved to the side of her bed, sat down in the small space beside her, and reached for her hand. Interlacing his fingers with hers, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss on her knuckles. Julia began to cry, understanding that he was saying goodbye. "Please don't leave me. I'm so scared, Jake," she whispered fervently. "I know," he replied, smiling at her. Leaning over, he pressed a gentle kiss on her lips and added, "You're just taking a vacation away from us all, in case that isn't clear. Let's hope that when you return, you'll still be this nicer version of yourself." Julia took a deep, calming breath, his teasing tones somewhat soothing her fears. Raising her left hand, she slowly touched the side of his face. "Do you think there's ever going to be a chance of me bridging that gap between us?" she whispered, giving him a searching gaze. "Jules, I told you something way back, and I'm going to tell you something similar now. This journey you are embarking on, I need you to do it for yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone. For yourself. Giselle Davies. Whatever you decide to dabble in to fill the void in your life, please, baby, do it for you. You don't need me to be fulfilled," Jake said, and Julia interjected. "I want you. I love the person that I am with you, Jake. I know you don't think it's real, but I know how I feel. You are my safe place, Jake," she confessed in a fervent whisper, tears swelling in her eyes, making his brows furrow as he gave her a keen scrutiny. "Back there in that park, when I thought I was dying, when I was scared and thought everyone had left me to die, the thought of you was all I wanted in my head as I faced death," she said, her voice shaking terribly and barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I am certain something must have been wrong with me, but I don't want to lose you again, and this is not an obsession." "I can feel it, Jake," she whispered, tears spilling from her eyes, soaking her bandages. Jake let out a shaky breath. He couldn't quite believe his ears. "I know you don't believe me. I will show you. I will focus on myself, as you said, and wait for as long as I can until you believe me. I will wait. I'm not making more mistakes, not now that I have this chance," she whispered. "You do know how scandalous these confessions are for a married woman," Jake teased as he stroked the corner of her lips with his thumb, not quite sure how to handle this emotional Julia. She sounded so sincere and her emotions seemed real, causing his heart to constrict with emotions. "I think in time you will come to agree with me that Sean Cavalier's Julia died in that park, and he let her," she replied. Jake let out a sigh. "I'm sorry about your broken glasses and being shot. Henri Cavalier is a crazy maniac." "You need to watch yourself," Jake warned, and she nodded. A rap on the iron door resounded, signaling Jake to wrap it up. Julia's heart picked up speed. "Wait for me. Please, Jake, for more experiments," Julia whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Experiments, Jules?" he teased. She nodded. He grinned. "We'll see," he replied. She let out a sigh, and in her bid to lighten the mood, she quipped, "Your boss is crazy protective of you." Jake chuckled. "He has first-hand experience of what a nutcase you were." "Forgive him," he replied. "I'm not that woman anymore, Jake," she whispered, her voice soft and pleading. "I hope so, Jules." "Mostly for your sake," he rasped. Then he covered her lips with his, drawing in her upper lip to suckle gently, and whispered against her mouth, "I'll be looking forward to that experiment, Jules." Deepening the kiss, he ensured she moaned his name before he drew back and headed for the exit. Julia's heart broke watching him go, but as he said, it was temporary. She was going to do as they said, then come back for her man. She loved him and wanted to spend her life with him, and she would prove to him and his family that she was a changed woman, different from the one they all knew. But she had forgotten, like sand in the wind blown away forever. 2 years, she murmured to herself. I can do 2 years, she added. Then her shoulders shook as she broke down, crying quietly. Returning to New York, Nathaniel ensured that Aria departed the same way she arrived, accompanied by Tom Hill, Anita, and Jordan, while he flew back the aircraft he'd piloted. After landing at the helipad, he double-checked to ensure Aria had safely reached home before their car departed from the airport. As their Jeep pulled up in front of the Hawthorne's mansion, Andrew said, "Boss, Greg just sent a message saying Henri Cavalier is still in town." Nathaniel pushed the door to his side open and said, "He is not our problem, Andrew. However, if he decides to pull me into his mess, I will be ready. Let's focus on making our trip to Hawaii." Leaving the door open, he climbed the porch stairs, knowing with utter conviction that Henri Cavalier was in for a big surprise. Best-laid plans often go awry, especially in Samuel Cavalier's camp. Aria's eyes flickered open the following day, nestled in Nathaniel's arms. Her lips stretched into a smile, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that they had helped Julia, or Giselle, to be safe now. But then the thought of the reunion gradually wiped the smile off her face. Although she was curious to meet their old gang again, she was also a tad nervous about seeing Nathaniel's array of lovers all gathered in the same place. It would be like university again, and she was certain they would all be curious to know who he was with and, of course, how he looked. Pulling back from him, she allowed her eyes to roam his face, his exposed pectorals, noting how incredibly attractive he still was. Nothing seemed out of place or had changed, except he looked even more mature. She rolled her eyes in annoyance and smacked him on the chest. Nathaniel opened one eye, quietly studying her features before he opened the other one. "Was I snoring?" he rasped, his voice making her feel all warm inside, which vexed her even more. His baritone voice sounded different when he'd just woken up, giving it a soothing depth that always made her feel like melting wax, especially when wrapped up in his arms. Aria glowered at him. His comment about snoring added to her annoyance because he didn't even snore. His kind of snoring was a tranquil breathing that was soft and soothing, which prompted her to smack him again at the thought. Leaning close to his face with only a hairbreadth between them, she replied, "You don't even snore." Then she smacked him again. The corners of Nathaniel's lips curled into an amused smile. "Okay," he said in a drawl, stressing the word comically. "Whatever did I do to get you all Aria Everly on me right now?" he quipped. What does that even mean?" she replied, both bemused and amused. "You know what it means. I can see the mean girl gleam in your eyes," Nathaniel replied with mock seriousness, making her giggle. Then she stopped, mock glaring at him, before mimicking the "my eyes are on you" gesture, then tried to pull back to get off the bed. Nathaniel grabbed her by the forearm, pulling her close to him as he whispered, "Don't I at least get a good morning kiss, my love?" Aria arched an eyebrow at him, but undeterred, he grinned at her and deftly pressed a quick kiss on her lips before she could react, burying his face in the nook of her neck. Aria tried to hold back a giggle, her body shaking with it, but when Nathaniel started to brush his lips against the base of her neck, nibbling on her skin and murmuring, "You smell so good," she didn't know when her eyes slipped shut and her hands went up to the nape of his neck as she ran her fingers through his lush hair, stroking his scalp. Nathaniel quivered against her, and one hand traveled up to frame the side of her neck as he trailed kisses back to her jawline and up to the corner of her lips. Aria breathed through parted lips, her head thrown back, her eyelashes fluttering at the delicious rush of pleasure he was commanding inside her. Nathaniel slipped his free hand into the opening of the bodice of her nightwear and filled his palm with her soft fullness. "Nathan." His name escaped her lips in a low, soft, aching whisper. Nathaniel responded by lifting her from the bed to make her straddle him, his rippling muscles a show of his strength. Much later, Aria stood in front of the mirror in the walk-in closet, putting on her underwear. She had picked out black lacy panties with a matching bra that hugged her full breasts perfectly. As she selected a dress to wear, her eyes caught the silhouette of Nathaniel standing by the door, leaning over the frame and looking at her. The loving tenderness in his eyes somewhat reassured her of her unadmitted insecurity. "Baby," Aria said, her voice low, and she could feel her face heating up under his dark, smoldering scrutiny. Nathaniel left the doorway to go and stand behind her. He was so close that she could feel his body against her back. He then wrapped his arms around her, stroking and cradling her stomach in a loving gesture that was becoming a habit of his, even when they were in public. Aria wondered if he was even aware he was doing it. He would stand close, speaking to whoever, and gently start to stroke her stomach through the fabric of her clothing, as if it was the most natural thing ever. She remembered him doing it one day at the hospital when he had come to pick her up after leaving his own office. Aria had been speaking with one of the doctors, and he had sneaked up to her, pressed a kiss on the back of her head, and just slipped his hand around her to start stroking her stomach as he greeted the other doctor and announced he'd come to steal her away. Aria had felt a little shy, especially when the other doctor had winked at her before looking away. Meanwhile, her dear husband had been oblivious. He had just pressed a quick kiss on her lips when she turned around to face him and said, "Shall we?" The memories made her let out a contented sigh as she rested against his body, allowing him to envelop her with his warmth. "How are we doing, my love? Are you happy with me? Is this what you want?" Nathaniel questioned in a low, vulnerable tone, seeking reassurance of the happiness he thought he saw in her eyes. "Yes, yes, and yes," Aria whispered back. "I wouldn't trade this for the world, my love. And you? Is this what you want?" she added, opening her eyes to meet his through the mirror. He leaned closer. "Do you have any idea how beautiful you look? How irresistible I find you like this? Carrying my children, your skin glowing so beautifully. The brilliant, incredibly talented Aria Everly is my wife. You are selfless, kind, your angelic aura enveloping everyone around you. You kept me alive by the sheer force of your love for me. You gave me 2 incredibly smart sons, gave me a family, built a home with me, and maintained the one I had before you came into my life. My men will die for you. Every single one of them will protect you to their last breath. How dare you ask me if this is what I want? I never dreamed of this. Yes, I dreamed of having you as mine forever, but what you've done to my life exceeds my wildest imagination. Every day I look at you, and I feel safe, fulfilled, and content, because you are mine." Tears welled in Aria's eyes, blurring her vision before they fell down her face as she blinked. Nathaniel cupped her face, making her crane her neck so she could continue to look into his eyes. He lowered his head to press his forehead against hers. "You are my everything, Aria Hawthorne. Don't you know that, my love?" Nathaniel whispered. "As you are mine," Aria managed to whisper back before he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you so much, my darling," Aria added against his chest. Nathaniel let out a deep sigh. "I know, baby," he rasped, his voice low and gruff with feelings. Much later, fully dressed, they went to the boys' room to let them know they would be accompanying them to Hawaii on a weekend trip. "I know Hawaii. It's the Coconut Island," Liam exclaimed with joy. Owen face-palmed himself in exasperation, which made Nathaniel chuckle. "It's more than just the Coconut Island, Liam," he replied with a roll of his eyes. Nathaniel pulled his nose, making him comically grimace. "I know that," Liam retorted with an arched eyebrow. "Okay, my little know-it-alls, let's pick out outfits and start packing," Aria announced in a bid to break the impending argument she knew would follow. Nathaniel helped her carry the 2 into the walk-in closet, and Aria stood back as the 3 brought out 2 travel bags. She started to pick the clothes from the hanger and passed Owen's to him and Liam's to him. Nathaniel helped to reach the ones she couldn't and stole kisses at intervals when the boys weren't watching. "Are we going to be allowed to do fun stuff?" Liam asked. "Of course you are going to be allowed to do fun stuff. It's a weekend vacation," Aria replied. Liam paused what he was doing to run out to bring his father's phone and, pressing the voice recorder, held it towards his mother and said, "I'm going to need you to repeat that." Aria glowered at him. Nathaniel burst out laughing. "Sometimes, Liam, you do push your luck," Owen stated. "So you don't want to have fun on your own?" Liam scoffed at his brother, throwing him an annoyed glance. I'm taking my pet robot and a few books. All I'm going to need is a poolside and silence, Owen replied. Liam facepalmed himself. It's a vacation, Owen, he remarked, frustration evident in his tone. I promise you will be allowed to do your own thing. All right, Nathaniel interceded. Liam pressed the recorder and said, I'm going to need that on record, Daddy. Nathaniel arched an eyebrow at the little imp, making Aria turn away to hide her face as she laughed. When they were done packing, Aria and Nathaniel got ready to go to work, during which Nathaniel put a call through to Andrew to get abreast with the arrangements they had put in place for the trip. They were supposed to leave by 7 p.m. for the 10-hour flight, so as to have time to sleep and settle in their suite, be well rested, and prepare before the opening dinner event organized for the reunion. Nathaniel had about 2 meetings to attend with prospective partners interested in marketing and distributing their products, as well as a potential investor. Meanwhile, Aria planned to use the period to conduct a ward round, ensuring her patients were recovering well and assigning them to other doctors for the weekend. The family had breakfast together, and Nathaniel left in the same car with Aria. They dropped her off with the promise to pick her up by 5 p.m. Have a great day, my love, Aria quickly said, pressing a kiss on Nathaniel's lips before moving to exit the Jeep. He stopped her, pulling her back, and thoroughly kissed her before saying, You too, my love. Aria swallowed softly, her eyes darting from his to his lips before she kissed him again and then exited the Jeep. Nathaniel smiled to himself as he settled back into his seat. As soon as Aria entered the reception, a nurse exclaimed with delight upon seeing her and rushed to her, offering her a file. Good morning, Dr. Hawthorne, she greeted. Aria opened the file and groaned. The nurse chuckled. A complex appendectomy with severe complications first thing in the morning. Aria grumbled as she assessed the new case. You know what they say, no rest for the medical personnel, she quipped. And you are the first doctor to clock in, so... Aria chuckled. Maybe I should create an entrance door that leads straight to my office then, she quipped. The other lady laughed. Aria didn't get a moment's break until 2 minutes after 5 p.m. Checking her watch, she hurried away from the theatre ward, making her way to her office, thinking perhaps Nathaniel must be waiting for her. Upon reaching her office door, she pushed it open and said, Baby, I'm so sorry. I had an emergency. Her voice trailed off when she saw that Nathaniel wasn't in her office, nor were any of his guards. A man was seated behind her desk with his legs propped up, and a gun was placed on the table by his crossed legs. It was Henry Cavalier. Aria's heart raced, and a groan from her general left made her look in that direction. She saw Sean Cavalier slumped in a wheelchair, a knife lodged in his stomach. Alarm bells sounded in her head. As much as I enjoyed being called baby by such a beautiful, outstanding woman, I know Nathaniel Hawthorne would not want to share, so then I must focus on why we are here. Henri Cavalier quipped in a nonchalant tone that one would think all was well in the world, except it wasn't. Close the door, Dr. Hawthorne, Henri commanded, this time his voice firm and threatening. Aria quietly did as she was told. What's going on? Why does he have a knife to his stomach, and why is he not in emergency? Aria forced herself to ask, trying to sound as if she were not terrified. Man, so many questions. Which should I answer first? Henri quipped. I was under the impression that he was your son, Aria remarked with a frown. He is. This was an accident, he gestured in Sean's direction. Perhaps if you let me answer one question before you throw another at me, we might get things done faster, huh? What I meant was that... Aria started to say, but Henri cut her off with a snort. Christ, this is why I don't date intellectuals, always feeling the need to impact knowledge. Nauseating, huh? He said, looking in Sean's direction. Mr. Cavalier, Aria made to speak again. Quiet, Henri Cavalier growled, making Aria wince. She stepped backward as if she were visibly hit. Damn it, I'm sorry, Henri quickly added. Can you help my boy? Aria didn't bother answering. She rushed to Sean to examine his wound and quickly went to her desk to pick up scissors. Rushing back, she cut off his shirt to assess the extent and depth of the knife. I need to take him to surgery, Aria was saying, then froze at the sound of a gun being cocked. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Henri replied. Aria slowly turned to face him, her eyebrows furrowed. What, didn't you bring him here to be helped? Aria questioned. Yes, but I can't risk being seen by your security or anyone, or I might have to shoot a few of your staff. It's nothing personal. I just can't have witnesses running around and such, he replied in a calm voice, as if he hadn't just threatened to commit mass murder. What do you expect me to do then? Aria retorted, anger simmering in her now. She couldn't tell how the bastard had gotten past security, but judging that Sean was in a wheelchair and Henry was wearing a hooded jacket, she could make a wild guess. Fix him here, then you can leave, otherwise people will die. It is that simple, Henri Cavalier threatened. Mr. Cavalier, if I don't take him to surgery where I can properly treat his wound, he will either bleed to death or succumb to complications, Aria explained through gritted teeth. I know and appreciate the warning, but like I said, he is not leaving this room, and if he dies, you will die along with the child you are carrying, Henri Cavalier delivered with a cold smile. Are you threatening me now? Aria said, her fists clenching by her side as she took a step forward, which seemed to catch Henry by surprise, judging by the way his eyebrows went up, and his eyes momentarily widened before a slow smirk appeared in the corner of his lips. Man, do I wish I could steal you from Hawthorne. You are one daring lady. It's cute, but it would get you killed, he said, and then added with steely resolve, Go on, get to it. His eyes were cold and chilling. I am not some dog whom you can simply command then threaten with your wannabe gangster attitude. Your son is dying, and I need to assess the extent of the damage to his organs before I operate. I am not a magician, Mr. Cavalier, who can simply fix him, as you put it. I'm going to take him to surgery, and you can choose to assist if you wish, but if you want to shoot me for trying to do my job and help your son, then go ahead or get the hell out of my way, Aria retorted. Henri Cavalier's eyes widened in evident shock. Sean Cavalier began to weakly laugh before succumbing to a fit of coughing, blood spilling from his mouth. Aria turned away from Henri Cavalier and went to push the wheelchair Sean occupied. It seemed Henri Cavalier hadn't quite recovered from her retort until she was outside in the lobby. Then Aria heard him say from behind her, Stop or I will shoot you. Aria didn't stop. Whoa. Jake Darfield was among the first security details to arrive at Evergreen Memorial Hospital. Getting off the Jeep, he walked side by side with Aiden into the hospital reception. The two waved to the hospital security team as they strode past the entrance, making their way to the administrative ward to get Dr. Hawthorne. Right before they rounded the lobby that led to her office, they heard a male voice yell, Stop, or I will shoot. Jake exchanged a glance with Aiden, and the two deftly pulled out their guns, rushing to the start of the hallway. A low growl escaped Jake's lips when he saw Henri Cavalier pointing a gun at Dr. Hawthorne's back. He didn't bother to look at who was hunched over in the wheelchair Dr. Hawthorne was pushing, but Aiden noticed. Duck! Aiden yelled at Dr. Hawthorne just as Jake pulled the trigger, hitting Henri Cavalier right in his right shoulder, an instinctive move to prevent him from shooting. A loud groan rent the air as Henri Cavalier dropped his gun and bent over in pain. Jake didn't even try to take cover in case the man managed to recover faster than anticipated and pick up the gun to fire at him. He ran down the lobby past Dr. Hawthorne toward Henry. Aiden was right by his side, but stopped to shield Dr. Hawthorne with his body as he grabbed the wheelchair and pushed it away from her. He then pointed his gun at Sean Cavalier's head in a sequential move that was surreal. No. He is not the threat. His father is, Dr. Hawthorne quickly asserted. Aiden gingerly lowered his gun then, his broad chest heaving as he directed a concerned glance at Dr. Hawthorne. Please tell me you're fine, he rasped. Aria nodded. I'm fine, she whispered, tears swelling in her eyes. Her entire body was shaking from the ordeal. She had been so scared that she was done for when Henri Cavalier cocked his gun at her back. She took quick, shallow breaths, leaning against the side wall. Aiden didn't take his eyes off her, although his attention was also on Sean and Henri Cavalier, in case Jake missed any sudden move. Jake grabbed Henri Cavalier by the label of his jacket and pulled him up. You pointed a gun at a pregnant woman? Just what kind of unfortunate soul birthed you, animal? He growled right before he punched Henri in the face and swept his legs out from under him, making him land on his back on the floor with a subtle thud. Jake then pressed his boot to Henry's wounded shoulder, making the man cry out in anguish. It gave Jake great satisfaction to see him in agony. The scene of Julia getting shot all in the bid to escape this bastard replayed in his head, and he applied more pressure, causing Henry to growl loudly in agony. Nathaniel, accompanied by Andrew and Charles, came through the hospital entrance 5 minutes after Jake and Aidan. The three strode down the hallway, and upon reaching the end of it, the loud cry of someone who sounded like they were being tortured made them pause their strides for about a second before they broke into a run. Nathaniel's heart lunged hard against the wall of his chest when he realized the sound was coming from the lobby near Aria's office. No, 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 no. The words resounded in his head as he reached the start of the hallway, his chest heaving. He quickly scanned the scene and let out a relieved sigh when he saw Aria with Aidan shielding her. His eyebrows furrowed when he saw Sean Cavalier, shirtless and bloodied, in a wheelchair, while Jake loomed over Henry Cavalier, pressing him down with his boot and pointing a gun at the man like some avenging angel. Nathaniel rushed to Aria first, pulling her into his arms and noting how her body was shaking. "Are you okay?" he said into her hair. She nodded against his chest. Nathaniel then drew back to give her a thorough once-over to ensure she was fine, before cupping her face with his hands to peer into her eyes, needing reassurance that the Camoras hadn't harmed her. She nodded again with lips trembling as she whispered, "I'm fine now." He pressed a kiss to her forehead before drawing her back into his arms. Then he heard Andrew trying to talk Jake down, telling him not to shoot Henry Cavalier. Nathaniel drew back from Aria to walk over to them, stopping by Jake's side. "What did he do, Jake?" he said in a wary tone. "He was going to shoot Dr. Hawthorne in the back," Jake replied through gritted teeth. "If I hadn't shot him, he would have." His voice trailed off. "What?" Andrew gasped in shock. Then his face transformed into a scowl as he swiftly drew his gun and shot Henry Cavalier in the other shoulder. The older man let out a loud curse, grimacing in pain. Satisfied with the response, Jake stepped back and instinctively handed his gun to Nathaniel. Nathaniel took the gun and crouched over Henry Cavalier's legs. "You have 1 second to deny what he just said," Nathaniel growled, his voice low and guttural. "I fucking told her to stop," Henry Cavalier retorted through gritted teeth. Nathaniel responded, pressing the muzzle of the gun to Henry's left thigh and pulling the trigger. Henry whimpered. Jake held back a satisfied grin. "You saw that she is pregnant, right?" Nathaniel asked. Henri Cavalier shook in pain. Nathaniel pressed the muzzle to his other thigh and pulled the trigger again. "You bastard, you're going to pay for this. Every single one of you," Henri Cavalier growled with a mix of pain and rage. His eyes had gone red, snot dripped from his nose, and sweat beaded his forehead and upper lip. Nathaniel stood up, straightening his spine, then handed the gun back to Jake and strode over to Aria, noting how Aidan stood shielding her from view. Nathaniel interlaced his fingers with hers as he stood beside Sean. "What happened, baby?" he asked Aria. She let out a sigh and told him how she had found the two in her office earlier. As she spoke, she seemed to remember that Sean was wounded and immediately checked his pulse. "Oh shit, I need to get him to surgery," she said. Nathaniel nodded. "Okay, let's go then," he urged, helping her to push Sean. "What do we do with this piece of shit, boss?" Andrew called after Nathaniel. "Let's see if there's any other doctor who can see to him." "I'm definitely not letting him near my wife," Nathaniel replied over his shoulder. "Jake," he called. "Yes, boss?" "Handcuff him to the bed," Nathaniel directed. "With pleasure," Jake replied. Nathaniel stood in the surgery room with Aria and 2 other nurses as she operated on Sean. He noticed how she paused at intervals to look in his direction, as if to make sure he was still there. He could tell the incident had shaken her and that she was trying to be strong. He commended her for it. Any other person would have been hysterical, yet she kept it together despite knowing she could have lost her life, along with their babies. The thought made him clench his jaw. That bastard had more to answer for. If not for Samuel Cavalier and the fact that Aria was right there, he would have wasted the fucker. He started to pace but stopped when Aria threw a worried glance in his direction. After Sean's surgery was over, the nurses moved him to intensive care. While they were hooking him up to the machines, Nathaniel strode back to the end of the surgery ward where an intern was operating on Henri Cavalier. He nodded to himself when he saw Jake standing guard in the operating room, keeping an eye on the man. Returning to the intensive care unit, he waited outside for Aria to come out. When she did, he opened his arms and she hurried to him. Nathaniel wrapped her up in a hug. "You are safe now, my love. I'm sorry I came late. There was a bit of traffic. We miscalculated. I'm so sorry," Nathaniel rasped into her hair. "You arrived on time," she whispered against his chest. "I think he would have shot me. The man is insane." Nathaniel's arms tightened around her at that statement, a profound anger simmering inside him. "I've got you," he managed to respond. Aria held on to him, reveling in his protective embrace. "How long do you think it will take Sean to wake up?" "I really want to speak to him to better understand what happened," Nathaniel remarked. "Can we give him an hour? Then we will wake him." "He's lost blood," Aria replied in a tired voice. "Okay, have you had any sustenance since breakfast?" Nathaniel probed, noting how tired she looked and sounded. She shook her head. "I'm sorry. I've been so busy." "I had planned to eat as soon as we got on board," Aria explained. "Come, let's get something for you to munch on in the meantime," Nathaniel said, pressing a kiss on her forehead and guiding her away while still holding her to his side. Much later, when Sean Cavalier opened his eyes, Nathaniel, Andrew, Jake, and Charles stood side by side a few inches away from the foot of his hospital bed. Aria was by his side, ensuring his comfort with pillows propped behind his head. Sean's face turned in her direction, and he evidently thought Dr. Hawthorne was the only one there with him. "Ah, I'm still alive. I suppose you won the round?" he rasped. "Did you think I would lose?" Aria quipped in good humor. "I'm not going to lie, I had my money on him, but you surprised me. And him by the look of things. Do you think you could talk your husband into letting you help to save my grandfather?" Aria's brows furrowed. "Why would your grandfather need a surgeon?" she asked. "Yeah, I can see how it might be confusing. I suppose I'd better start from the beginning then," Sean rasped. "Good, we are all eager to hear," Nathaniel replied. Sean blinked and turned his face in the direction of the voice, his eyes moving from Nathaniel to his men. He let out a sigh. "The whole cavalry, huh?" he rasped, the corner of his lips tweaking in a semblance of a smile. "Help my grandfather Hawthorne. He honored the pact with your father." Nathaniel folded his arms against his chest and repeated, "Tell me why Samuel Cavalier needs saving, Sean." His voice deepened, portraying patience that he was far from feeling. "I don't know if you are aware that Henri Cavalier has already killed Julia," Sean began, his tone tinged with anger and pain. "You knew what would happen already, Sean," Nathaniel replied. "Well, I had hoped to save her, but what Henri was planning was far worse. Julia, like my uncle and cousins, was just collateral damage. I confronted him after I saw the picture of Julia's burnt body sent to him by one of his men. He told me he was doing it for us," Sean said, chuckling humorlessly. "Imagine thinking killing my wife, blowing up his own brother and nephew for some title was something worth bragging about. In a fit of anger, he told me my grandfather would soon die, and he would finally be completely in charge and needed me by his side. I told him thank you, but hard pass, and asked what was wrong with my grandfather. He refused to tell me. When I wanted to leave, telling him I did not want to be part of his scheme, he tried to stop me. I fought him. Then he stabbed me and told me it was for my own good and would give me time to stay still and think of my life choices, especially now that Julia wasn't here to keep me in the States," Sean explained. "So then you don't know why he was sure your grandfather would soon die?" Nathaniel asked. Sean nodded. "I thought it was ridiculous. If he planned a hit on him, no one in their right mind would honor that. 80% of the Camoras are loyal to my grandfather unless it was something else, something that has to do with his health," Sean supplied. Nathaniel responded, giving the other man a pensive stare. "You have to help my grandfather. If he dies, you can kiss that pact between our families goodbye. Henri Cavalier will not honor it," Sean added. "Will you honor it?" Andrew asked. "What do you mean? I'm not part of that life. I left it behind a long time ago," Sean replied with a scowl. "Man, you are slow," Jake muttered, earning a glare from Sean. "If your grandfather finds out everything your father has done, he will be executed. Which one of your siblings is trained enough to take charge while your grandfather cleans up your father's mess and heals from whatever is supposed to kill him?" Jake remarked with an arched eyebrow. "You are forgetting my Aunt Anne. She is as formidable as the two of them combined," Sean retorted. I personally would prefer she took over. She's saner, he grumbled. You know, Sean, deep inside you know you can't run from this. You are already involved. That's why your father came here to get you, Nathaniel delivered. Sean let out a tired sigh. Going back would be betraying myself, dishonoring my mother's memory and Julia's. It would mean they died for nothing. I was supposed to do better, to give my mother some semblance of peace that I was no longer part of that mess. If I had gone back, I would have been able to save Julia. Going back now would mean nothing and serve no purpose, Sean lamented. Jake lowered his gaze, trying to quell the urge to call the man a liar. Or perhaps he was just a coward. He'd left Julia there in that park when she was being shot at. He'd abandoned her and allowed his men to get him to safety. Sean Cavalier might care for Julia in his own way, but it wasn't the kind of care Jake would wish for his blood. Do you think introducing some kind of reform might give you the semblance of peace you seek? Aria chimed in, her voice soft and hesitant. Pardon me. I have no idea what your family is all about, but maybe instead of running away, you could try to change some things. Putting such effort instead of abandoning your family might be perceived as more honorable. Sean Cavalier met and held Aria's gaze, his eyebrows furrowed, his eyes darting in their sockets as if he was pondering her advice. Aria shrugged. Just my 2 cents, she added, and then said, would you be staying here at this hospital to recover, or do you have other plans for your safety? Sean blinked and replied, I'm going to stay, thanks. Aria nodded and threw a glance at Nathaniel, receiving a nod of approval from him before she lowered the bed, so Sean could rest. As she administered a tranquilizer into his intravenous tube, Nathaniel said, I will have the hospital security watch you, but you should know your father is also here at this hospital. Sean raised his head, and Aria placed a hand over his shoulder for him to lie down. What happened to him? Sean asked in bemusement. Aria remembered he'd passed out at the time and hadn't witnessed the whole showdown. He shot himself. He shot himself 4 times, Charles replied. Sean smirked. Good. That should slow him down, he said. I understand you can't kill him, but still... Sean's voice trailed off as his eyelids fluttered closed. Nathaniel walked over to Sean and gently shook him until his eyes opened, earning a disapproving frown from Aria and startling Sean. Do you have any idea where we can dispose of him? I don't want him in this building. I'd suggest calling his right-hand man to come collect him, but wouldn't it be better to keep him here under watch while we figure out how to help my grandfather? Sean suggested, his eyelids fluttering as the sleeping draft Aria administered pulled him into a slumber. No, I want him out of here, out of my town and country, or I swear I'll be the one breaking that damn pact, Nathaniel growled in evident frustration. I propose we drop him off in Italy or some random country, perhaps in a random hospital where he can be kept sedated until his father figures out what he has planned. Giving him back to his right-hand man might just give them time to devise a plan against his father and us, Jake proposed. What an idea. How about Mexico? It's right along our way, Andrew remarked with a smirk. After arranging for Henri Cavalier to be transported to a remote hospital and kept there, the Hawthornes headed to Hawaii. Nathaniel ensured that Aria got enough rest during the journey, making sure she had a good meal. With the boys under the watchful eyes of Anita and their big mama, Nathaniel joined Aria in the cabin, slipping into the bunk bed with her and pulling her into his arms. Don't scare me like that again, Ariana, Nathaniel whispered into her hair. If there's ever a next time, please try to be more amiable until help arrives. Please, my love, if anything ever happens to you, I don't know if I would be strong enough to live through that, he rasped against her hair. At first, I didn't know he was capable of actually shooting me, Aria replied in a low, quiet tone. He's a killer, Ariana. A cold-blooded killer, Nathaniel said, needing to convey the seriousness of the situation, to instill a certain level of fear in her so she wouldn't gamble with her life like that again. Aria burrowed into his arms and Nathaniel's hold tightened around her. Aria, remembering that she had called the man a wannabe gangster, let out a sigh. I'll be careful, I promise, she replied. Upon arriving at the resort, Andrew presented their gate pass to the security. The Hawthornes? "Oh, please, take that lane down to the end of the road. Your exclusive suites are that way," the security announced, directing their group to the east wing of the grounds. "Thanks," Andrew replied. Shortly after, they all disembarked from the vehicle. Nathaniel and Andrew, along with Jake, went ahead to sort out the arrangements with the concierge. Liam and Owen attempted to rush after them, but were intercepted by Charles and Aidan. Tom, Hill and Bella joined them, leaving Aria and Anita to trail behind. "Oh, my phone!" Aria suddenly exclaimed and turned to hurry back to the car that brought them. "Is there something I can help you with, madam?" the driver asked, meeting her halfway. "I think I left my phone in the seat compartment," she said apologetically, and the driver walked with her to the car to retrieve the phone. "Thank you," Aria said, and headed back to where Anita was still waiting for her. Suddenly, someone stepped into her path, and Aria almost collided with them. "What the hell?" she muttered to herself. Then her eyes met a pair of blue ones. "Oh, it's, you," Aria said with an awkward smile. "Uh-huh," was Agatha McCarthy's response, as she folded her arms against her chest and added, "What exactly do you hope to achieve by coming to this side of the resort?" Aria frowned. I'm not sure if I understand," she replied. "Come now, Aria Everly. We both know you aren't dumb, so spill. Of course, you must know the whole wing has been booked by the Hawthornes, and you have shamelessly brought yourself here so he could see you. Especially in your condition," she said, giving her a disdainful once-over. "I hope you at least know the father of this one," she added. "Aria, what's the hold-up?" Anita said from the side, walking up to meet them. Aria didn't know whether to laugh or cry. 1 minute back at the reunion, and she was already getting bullied again. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Agatha McCarthy shot at Anita, the other woman's eyebrows furrowed. "I'm Aria's guest, and you are?" Anita shot back. "I own the damn place, and if you are with this person, you are both trespassing," she retorted. "Really?" Anita replied, crossing her arms over her chest. "You have 2 minutes to get yourselves away from this section to the west section that fits your kind, or I'm going to have you forcefully removed from the resort entirely," Agatha McCarthy said with devilish relish. Aria started to laugh. "God, this isn't happening," she said between giggles. "Do you think this is funny?" Agatha McCarthy retorted, facing her with hands on her hips. "Yep, you would laugh if you knew what I know, but it's refreshing to know that you are still the Witch of the East." "Oh, Agatha, never change," Aria delivered, giggling, making the other woman glower at her. "You do look older, though. Is that grey hair on your temple?" Aria said with a gasp. Agatha looked flustered as she quickly held a hand to her temple and glared at Aria. "I'm calling security. See who will be laughing then," Agatha threatened. "Babe," Nathaniel called from the porch, his brows furrowed, wondering what was happening. He then left the porch to walk up to the women, walking around Anita to stand behind Aria. His eyes settled on Agatha McCarthy, and he instantly noted that she looked different from the Agatha back at school. She had added a little weight, and he couldn't be sure, but there was something definitely off about her nose and lips. Hi, Agatha, you two are getting acquainted already," he remarked, lacking what to say. And Aria watched as Agatha's eyes almost popped out, and her face paled as Nathaniel did that thing again, where he slipped his hand around her to stroke her stomach, in a possessive manner before pressing a kiss to the corner of her lips. "The sweets are set, baby, you need to go and rest," Nathaniel said against her ear. Aria was certain Agatha McCarthy had turned into a statue. She stood there as if frozen in time, and then she blinked as if collecting herself. "Oh, Nathaniel, I heard you are married. Is Aria Everly your wife?" she made herself ask. "Yes," Nathaniel replied with a proud smirk. "In case it isn't clear, he is also the father of my children, including this one I'm carrying," Aria said in a conspiratorial whisper. Agatha swallowed hard. She looked like she was going to be sick or cry or both. Aria grinned. "Why did you say it like that? Am I missing something?" Nathaniel probed in a tense tone. "Oh, this lady was going to call security to throw us out," Anita supplied. "What?" Nathaniel exclaimed. Nathaniel gaped at Agatha, then his brows furrowed as he realized that in his bid to prank Alexander and Blackwood, he had neglected to mention that Aria was his wife. He figured he was partly to blame and thought that as soon as they got back to New York, he would have to make some public announcements to introduce Aria to the world as his wife. Why he had to do that for her to be received well was beyond him. Aria was a renowned surgeon, and while she might be a celebrity in the medical world to people who cared about such things, people like Agatha McCarthy, or Mrs. Agatha Caldwell as she was known now, might still be ignorant of it. Or perhaps it was jealousy, which would be ridiculous. Agatha was married. Why she would still continue to be hateful to Aria was beyond him. Perhaps this kind of reception was one of the reasons why Aria had refused to come to the last reunion with him, preferring instead to keep away from this toxic environment. Maybe choosing to stay here was a bad idea, Nathaniel said, his voice tinged with a mix of annoyance and irritation. What? No, it's just a misunderstanding. I'm sure Aria Everly would surely understand, Agatha quickly interjected. Aria could see her distress at Nathaniel's remark. She is not Aria Everly, Mrs. Caldwell. She is Dr. Mrs. Ariana Hawthorne, my wife. Nathaniel snapped. If it was possible for the other woman to grow even paler, she would have, as she swallowed hard, nodded obediently to Nathaniel's remark. Aria had no idea how big the wing they were in was, but there were about 20 people. Nathaniel hadn't just brought his best security details, he'd also brought Mrs. Jonas and a chef, and he had booked the entire wing, which must have cost quite a fortune. Although Aria knew that Agatha had married someone with money, she had no clue of anything else. But she knew the woman worshipped money and status. It was what her entire personality was based upon. Aria was certain she wouldn't want to have to refund the money paid for the entire wing and lose someone like Nathaniel as a customer. Maybe you could apologize to Dr. Mrs. Hawthorne, Mrs. Caldwell, Anita suggested, her tone low and tinged with mirth, evidently enjoying that the woman was being brought down a peg. Yes, of course, Agatha immediately replied in agreement. She then faced Aria, swallowed and opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again before saying, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding, Dr. Mrs. Hawthorne. I will make certain it doesn't happen again. Please, I will have extra, soap bombs and essential oils sent to your suites as complimentary gift from us as an apology. Please stay. She managed to say, each word spaced, matching an expression that seemed as if she was in severe pain. That's kind of you, but no, thanks. I wouldn't want to accidentally grow a rash, Aria said, flashing the other woman a bright smile. Anita giggled. Turning to Nathaniel, Aria said, It's okay, my love. We're already here. Let's at least stay for the main event. Nathaniel peered into her eyes. Are you sure, baby? He pressed. Aria nodded with a smile, and Nathaniel let out a sigh. It's a pleasure to see you again, Mrs. Caldwell, Aria said to Agatha. Let's go, baby, she said to Nathaniel. He immediately wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her to his side as he pressed a kiss to her forehead and shepherded her away from Agatha, heading to the porch. Anita hurried to walk with them, leaving Agatha standing there like a pillar of salt. I think I'm beginning to understand why this reunion might be terrifying for you, Nathaniel said to Aria, his voice low, suggesting it was meant only for her ears. You have no idea, she sighed. We can leave, you know that, honey. We can just leave and go spend the weekend elsewhere, Nathaniel replied with concern. And miss seeing the rest of the gang? No way. Now I want to see all of their faces when they find out you are mine, she quipped, making Nathaniel chuckle, glad she wasn't taking the incident to heart. We will leave early then and go somewhere else and have another experience before heading back home, he rasped. I'm not going to say no to that, Anita chipped in, making the two pause to look in her direction. I bet the two of you forgot I was even here. I don't know whether to be offended or happy for my friend, Anita quipped. Aria giggled. Nathaniel grinned sheepishly. My apologies, he replied. Anita threw him a bow. Aria and Anita's mouths dropped open when they got to the hotel lobby, which was on the first floor. It was like an open-floor bar mixed with all kinds of fun activities, from karaoke to music games, dancing games, a skating arena, and a restaurant. All the staff were wearing the Hawthornes' brand colors, a mix of champagne gold with light gray. Liam and Owen were stepping on a giant keyboard, playing coordinated music that mixed with the chatter of the people milling about. Wow, Anita whispered. Yeah, wow, Aria interjected. Nathaniel chuckled. Wait until you see our room. Andrew said all the rooms have a theme. Ours is some kind of botanic paradise. I'm just glad the bed is big, and the bathroom has a jacuzzi. The view is great, though, Nathaniel remarked. Anita and Aria shared a pleased look. I hate to bail, but those colorful drinks are calling to me. Sorry, Ariana, I know you can't relate. Anita quipped, giggling with devilish relish as she rushed off. But not fair, Anita. Aria called to her, retreating back. Nathaniel chuckled, which earned him a glare and a playful smack on the chest. He cupped her chin and gave her a searing kiss. Drawing back to peer into her eyes, he rasped, "Want to take a hot bath with me instead? Then I'm going to give you something to satisfy your thirst." His voice was low and suggestive. Aria bit the corner of her lower lip in response and beamed at him. Nathaniel pulled her into a hug before shepherding her to the elevator. "Are the boys safe?" Aria remembered to ask before the elevator doors shut. "That's why we brought our own staff, Ariana. I take your safety, including our children's, very seriously," Nathaniel replied. "Thank you, my love," she said, smiling up at him. Nathaniel pressed a kiss on the tip of her nose in response. "So are Ethan and Alexander staying on this side of the resort too?" Nathaniel nodded. "I understand that this part of the resort consists of 3 similar buildings, with the grounds featuring pools, gardens, and golf courses thoughtfully spaced between them. This particular one has enough room to accommodate you and me, the boys, Tom Hill, Bella, Anita, and Andrew, your aunt, Jake, Aiden, and Charles. We reserved the second building for some of the staff, while the third one has a spill of our security team. Ethan, Alex, and Anna are staying in that one, and we just have a pool separating us. I know they expect me to share a building with them, but I suppose they will understand when they find out I have a family now," Nathaniel explained. "I had the impression the resort was filled with bungalows," Aria commented. "That's another wing of the grounds. I told Agatha to change the bookings to this one for our gang. I'm hoping it will compensate for the prank. I suppose I will know if it worked when we meet at dinner, since they've been here since yesterday," Nathaniel replied, chuckling. Upon reaching their suites, which took about the entire floor, Aria paused at the entrance. When Nathaniel described their room as some kind of botanic paradise, he wasn't exaggerating. The room's aesthetics reminded Aria of Nathaniel's mother's greenhouse at Riverview, which they had transformed into a room for him during his transplantation conditioning. The choice of indoor plants like snake plants, spider plants, and peace lilies was excellent for eliminating airborne toxins and improving air quality. These plants are known for their ability to purify the air by removing harmful pollutants and providing cleaner oxygen. While Aria appreciated the health benefits of such plants, she couldn't help but note why Nathaniel might not be particularly excited about the setting. It seemed like a poignant reminder of one of the lowest points in his life, a time that was still too recent to consider fully in the past. Aria gave him a side glance and waited until he met her gaze. He smiled at her, instinctively knowing she had grasped why the room wouldn't have been his first choice, but it had its health benefits for the 4 of them, including their unborn children and an adjoining door to another room which the boys could occupy. It was practical and logical, and it was only for 2 nights. "Can we change rooms?" Aria asked. Nathaniel shook his head, drawing her into his arms. "It's perfect for our family," he replied, his voice deep and husky as he pressed a kiss on her lips. "Maybe you can work at distracting me instead. For some reason, I'm not totally into this reunion thing anymore." Aria giggled. "We just got here, and that was supposed to be my line," she replied. He chuckled, peppering kisses on her face. "I came to see Ethan and Alex. I could have sent our donation, so I'm not really here for the whole charade," he replied. "I'm sure Ethan and Alex would find a way to draw you into some fun activities," Aria joked, giving him a narrowed gaze. Nathaniel threw back his head, laughing. "I'm a father and a husband. I can't afford to misbehave. I just hope you won't start to find me boring soon," he quipped. "Boring? I thought I was the nerdy one," Aria replied in mock horror. "You are too beautiful and sexy to be under that category." Nathaniel rasped, drawing her lower lip with his teeth into his mouth as he suddenly lifted her, making her giggle as he carried her to the bathroom. Placing her on the extended platform in front of the wall-sized vanity mirror, he started to take off her clothes while she helped him with his. "I think hell will freeze over before I find you, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Boring," Aria whispered as she nibbled on his lips. His mouth stretched into a smile. "Is that a promise, wife?" he quipped as he carried her towards the jacuzzi, which was already prepared for them. bubbling with exotic colors, the flowery scent filling the room in a subtle yet alluring manner. "Yes, my darling, it is indeed." She deepened the kiss, making him pause for about a minute before slowly lowering them both into the bubbling water. Aria let out a groan as the warm water enveloped her body, the effect of it and being in Nathaniel's arms making her feel like jelly. "Oh boy, this feels good," she whispered with pleasure. "Does it?" Nathaniel whispered back as he backed her against the frame. "How about this?" He added in a deep husky tone as he lowered his mouth to her chest. Downstairs, Liam and Owen kept running from one game course to another. But when Owen got caught up in a driving arcade game, Liam was distracted by the voices of two people speaking not too far away. Although he couldn't see them, he could hear them chattering about the other sections of the resort and how this one was the best, with a waterfall out back in the woods. He didn't quite understand what the male voice meant when he said, "Best place for you to hide and for me to seek." He thought it was weird that adults would want to play hide and seek, but the thought of a natural stream just in the backyard, like the voice said, piqued his interest. He quickly scanned the hall, noting how his Uncle Andrew was speaking with Aunt Anita and Uncle Charles, how Uncle Jake was walking to the bar area, and how Grandpa Hill and Grandma Bella were busy swirling in a slow dance. And Owen was still busy with his driving game. Liam thought it might be fun to go and explore the waterfall. After all, his mum and dad had told them they could have fun on their own. Slowly edging away to the side wall, Liam darted from wall to wall until he got to the corridor that led to the backyard before running the rest of the way. Upon bursting to the back, he grinned at the view of nicely trimmed greenery with tall coconut trees in the not-so-far distance. From where he stood, he could see the silvery glint of the waterfall pouring serenely down below. He managed to get down the flight of stairs and run in that direction. Soon enough, he got to the stream, his face etched with a smile at the sight of the crystal-clear water shimmering under the bright light of the sun, revealing the colorful corals at the bottom of the water. Liam decided to get in the water and perhaps collect a few of them. Removing his clothes, he left only his boxers and carefully entered the water. "Oh," he exclaimed with delight at the warm but cool water reaching up to his waist, then his chest, shoulders, before it completely enveloped him. Grinning to himself, he swam under the water, reminiscing about their time at Riverview. "Should you be out here alone?" A small voice suddenly resounded above the water. Liam paused and slowly resurfaced. His eyes settled on a young girl that was the size of a first grader. Liam thought she looked really pale, more like his father when he was sick. "Why? Are you the stream police?" Liam asked with an arched eyebrow. The girl rolled her eyes. "There's no such thing as a stream police," she retorted with an uppity tone that grated at Liam. "First graders always think they are all that. My dad said it's never wise to go into any water without adult supervision, and you are clearly a baby," the girl added, folding her arms over her chest. Liam glared at her, swimming back to the edge, which was not as shallow and exposed his chest. Realizing if he got out, the girl would see him semi-naked, he stopped and said, "The fact that I can get inside, and you are not allowed to just shows who the baby is." He grinned, especially when the girl glowered at him. "I am not allowed in the stream because I'm sick, not because of my age," she retorted. "Sounds like an excuse to me," Liam teased. The girl paused, and Liam gaped at her when she made to remove her dress. "Whoa, whoa! Girls aren't supposed to swim naked with boys," he exclaimed, panicking. "And I'm over here wondering what the boy is doing in a stream unsupervised," Jake said from the sideline. Liam froze, slowly turned in the direction of the voice, and then made to lower back inside the water. Jake tried not to laugh. "Really, Liam? That's the plan?" Liam let out a sigh. "Lillian, what are you doing out here?" A woman called as she appeared from another path leading into the woods. "Mum says I can take walks," the girl quickly replied in a defensive tone. "Yeah, right, come now, young lady," the woman said, ushering the girl away. Liam watched her throw him a sad glance before turning away. "You want to come out of there, buddy?" Jake urged. Liam nodded and got close enough to the edge for Jake to lift him up, making him cling to his back as he packed his clothing. "Did you see her trying to take off her clothes, Uncle Jake?" Liam whispered in awe. "I sure did," Jake replied, trying not to laugh. "Girls are so weird," he added. "You have no idea," Jake muttered, chuckling. Much later, the chime of the grandfather clock woke Nathaniel and Aria. They had fallen asleep tangled in each other's arms on the spacious bed. "I suppose it's time," Nathaniel said, shifting his posture and carrying Aria to lie on her back over his body. She giggled as he rubbed his hands up and down her stomach, but the giggle turned into moans when his left hand traveled a bit lower and his right hand moved to her chest. About an hour later, they left their suite after checking the boys' room and finding it empty. Aria wasn't surprised they hadn't come to take a nap, as they had slept almost the entire journey from home to Hawaii. In the lobby, they saw the boys playing mini-golf with Jake. Nathaniel frowned when he noticed Liam's slightly disheveled clothing. He shrugged, not concerned, since Jake was with them. "We should eat first before we head to the banquet hall. I don't want you accidentally eating something that won't agree with you," Nathaniel said, guiding her towards the restaurant. Liam and Owen waved at them, and Aria blew them a kiss. When they settled down to eat, the boys joined them, and the four ate together. "Are you two going on a date?" Owen asked. "Not really. We just have a fundraising dinner to attend tonight. Do you think you can hold the fort while we're gone for a few hours?" Nathaniel replied. "Uh-huh," Liam answered. "Auntie Anita said we're going to try karaoke and play team games," Owen added. "Really? That sounds like fun. I wish we could join you guys," Aria said. "We're doing it all night, so you can still join us later," Liam said. "All night?" Owen exclaimed. "You can go to sleep when you're tired," Liam suggested. Owen frowned before saying, "I guess I can." Nathaniel ruffled their hair and pressed a kiss on their foreheads. "Take care of yourselves and stay with your uncles," he said. "Yes, Daddy," Owen replied. "Uh-huh," Liam echoed as he quickly stuffed his mouth. A resort cart assigned to carry each guest from their lodgings to the banquet hall was already waiting for them outside by the time they reached the front of the building. Andrew sat beside the driver accompanying Nathaniel and Aria. The hall was situated at the center of the grounds, creating a pattern as carts formed around it, dropping off guests. Shouts of surprise and joyous exclamations from old friends reuniting resounded in the night air. And Nathaniel scanned the crowd for Ethan and Alexander, wondering if they'd already arrived at the venue. He looped an arm with Aria's, ushering her toward the entrance. Aria noticed the glances and open stares as people saw her with Nathaniel Hawthorne. She tried not to giggle at the open envy etched on some faces as they walked by. And Nathaniel wasn't helping. His attention was wholly on her as he shepherded her toward the hall. Suddenly, a familiar loud squeal echoed from the entrance as a lady turned around and saw them. She rushed towards them, and Nathaniel tried to prevent her from jumping on Aria, making her notice her swollen belly. It was Anna, Alexander's girlfriend back at the university. "Oh my God, Aria, look at you. You look so beautiful," she said, almost in tears as she drew Aria into a loose hug. "How are you, Anna?" Aria asked, noting she was still her bubbly self. "I'm fine, I guess, considering the circumstances," she replied, wiping her eyes to clean up tears. "It's so good to see you," Nathaniel chimed in, making Anna direct her attention to him. She nodded and wrapped her arms around his middle. Nathaniel chuckled and gently patted her on the back. When she drew back, she said, "Ethan and Alex are in there. They are going to lose their minds when they see you two together." Nathaniel responded, pressing a kiss to Aria's forehead, ignoring that everyone was watching. "Excuse me, my love," he said, then hurried inside. "My God, you two are so cute together, and to think you stayed together all these years," Anna exclaimed. Yeah, Aria replied, not quite sure whether to fill her in, but thinking perhaps later. "How are you and Alex?" Aria asked instead. Anna let out a sigh. "Girl, we should probably leave the catching up for later. Come, I want to see the boys' faces when they find out you and Nathaniel are a couple," Anna said with delicious relish, pulling her to the entrance of the hall. Nathaniel reached the hallway, silently noting familiar faces and hesitant waves from past lovers. He thought the whole idea of a reunion was crazy, especially when they were expected to bring their families. He wondered how many families would remain intact before the end of the weekend. "Nate!" Nathaniel heard Ethan's familiar voice and turned in that direction. He burst out laughing when he saw Ethan had grown a beard. "Dude, what the fuck?" he exclaimed as the other guy hurried to him. The two shook hands and jerked each other into a hug. "Bro, what's with the bush on the face, man?" Nathaniel quipped. One bloody second and you're already body-shaming me. In case you don't know, ladies find this look absolutely sexy, Ethan replied, making Nathaniel laugh. Alex, who had gone for drinks, joined them, and the three spent a few minutes exchanging pleasantries. Then Nathaniel watched as Ethan froze, his eyes darting to something behind him. "Come on, this is cruel," Alex murmured, almost in anguish. Nathaniel made to look back, but Ethan stopped him and whispered, "It's Ariana, man. Don't look back, or she will see us, and she is pregnant. Like, really, way to twist the damn knife." Laughter rumbled in Nathaniel's chest. "She is with Anna, and they are coming here, damn it," Alex interjected. "And she looks hot." "Wonderful," he added. "Guys, there's something I need to tell you." "Hey, guys," Aria said as she joined them with Anna. Ethan and Alex gave her an uncomfortable look. Hey, Aria. Long, time?" Alex stuttered comically. Ethan glowered at her. Nathaniel couldn't hold it in any longer and started to laugh.